Thanks, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I think I've been here 3 other times, as I recall. So I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach this time around. I hope you're going to be cool with it. A little bit of a story first, though. I'm sure you guys have heard of books on tape, right? I'm old enough to remember when books were actually on tape. And I was getting my dad's car. I was borrowing my dad's car when I was very young, and I was probably looking for one of my tapes, and I put in one of his, and it was this book series on power negotiations by this guy named Richard Dawson. And I thought, I'm going to roll with this for a little bit just because I thought it was kind of funny, but it turned out to be really cool, and it changed my life in some ways. I don't even know if this book's around anymore, or if you can get it. I'm sure it might be cool, but I remember distinctly a couple of the lessons in there, and I'll share one with you that's germane to tonight's conversation. And it has to do with this real estate developer. And this real estate developer wanted to build a mall in some area that's fairly developed. And the real estate developer kept going to the owner of this property and offering him money, and the guy kept slamming the door on them and saying, "Get off my property," and pulling out his shotgun and the whole nine and all that business, right? Imagine. I don't know if that's actually what happened, but it's kind of how I remember it in my head. But the point is, they couldn't get the land from this guy. So they hired this guy, Richard Dawson, the power negotiator. I remember his name. And they told him, they said, hey, here's the deal. I can't remember the actual number, but it was a big number, even for back then. And I remember something like, hey, we're prepared to go up to 10 million, say, for this piece of property. And everything that you keep, you can keep anything under the 10 million. So, you would think you would try to get in there and maybe sell it for, $500,000 less or whatever. That's kind of where I was thinking, that's pretty cool. I wonder how I'd get a job like that. But anyway, what the guy did is he did his research, and he realized that the landowner that had been throwing the people off of his property, he didn't have any surviving family, no real deep friends, and no wife or anything. So he was basically a unit of one, and he was kind of close to the end of his life term anyway, right? So let's just call this guy Bill Smith. I don't know. I don't remember the guy's name, but the point is, Richard, power negotiator, said, "Hey, Bill, what if we were to name the center the Bill Smith Shopping Mall?" And he said, "You would do that for me?" I said, "I think I could do that for you." He goes, "You make that happen and you can have the land for free." Get it? So, what I thought, as I kind of recalled this conversation, I thought, I'm a nonlinear guy, and I got about 30 plus years of experience. So why would I come up here and do like a turnkey PowerPoint presentation? You live in the age of TikTok and YouTube or whatever I'm doing. But why not take a nonlinear approach and let you guys dissect me in the ways that are interesting to you, like what you want to get out of this? So in that order, or with the spirit of that, I'm showing my age here, but there was an old show called The Hollywood Squares. I don't expect anyone to remember that, but it was sort of set up like this. I see a smile back there, maybe somebody does. But anyway, the Hollywood Squares kind of approaches, these are not animated or anything, that would be cool, but there's a bunch of stuff, right? So if you don't have anything to pick, I can pick, and we can kind of dynamically move through these as they're interesting to you, and I'll unpack the stories or the relevance behind each tile. And there's a little bit of a clue to it a little bit, and we don't have to get through them all. We don't have to do much. We don't have to do more than a few if we roll in that way. It just depends on you, or we can always come back to the others if you want to, at another time. So keep this party rolling if you're into it. And one thing that I want to mention, just so I don't want to forget it, is I had a connection last week. I got a phone call from somebody that I met who when I met the person, generation? I can't say generation. Anyway, he was your generation, sort of where you are point in time right now in your careers, okay? And we had a really engaging conversation, and he was a really neat dude, and he's from South Africa and went to Art Center and scholarship, and he called me last week, and he was like, "Dude," he goes, "I'm doing one of these things here at Long Beach." And he designed the lights on the Rivian, which I just adore. Yeah, he's a cool dude. So, don't miss Toko. I'm giving him a shout out because I got a lot of love for my friend Toko. I got a chance to see him come up and go from what, seemed like a kid when I met him, and now he's got a kid of his own and a beautiful career, and he's a really cool human. So I just want to make sure you guys put that on your radar. I think that would not be one to miss because he's a really neat person. Anyway, so with that in mind, this is a chance for you guys to choose and have your guided tour wherever it takes us. So who's got courage to pick a tile? All right, let's go for it.
Let's go with being there. I'm a big Peter Sellers fan.
Okay. No, not really. Being there, yeah. Context is king, right? For sure, we know that. And being there really has a lot to do with a few things, really. For one, when I was in school, which felt like, lifetimes ago in design school, there was a guy, I was so hardcore committed to my craft that I never really looked up. I was just really like glued to my boards and just going all the time. And a good friend of mine was like, hey man, let's go to the aquarium and get some inspiration. And I'm like, no man, I gotta work. I gotta keep going, I gotta keep doing this. And he enjoyed school a lot more than I did. And we both ended up at the same place. We both ended up working at Fisher-Price together. Only he has memories of college that don't include trying to break into the building to try to work all night. It's kind of my MO. So I think being there is a couple different vantage points there. Like wherever you are, there you are, right? So you're here right now. Don't forget to take it all in. It's important. And it's really easy to get in front of your work and forget that you're really, you got to be where your customer is. And when I worked at Motorola, being there, it's almost hard to talk about because I spent a lot of time in Tel Aviv, Israel, designing products, for the Israeli Defense Department and so forth. Mostly, all communication type of gear, made for, police, fire, and military mostly, and I'm just a guy designing stuff that saves lives. And when you do the ride-alongs and you see how things go, the different cultures, different nations, right? See how things work, and you realize, wow, man, there's so much happening in the world, and being there is really part of it. I was in my halogen-lit office, air-conditioned, in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, designing for Motorola. And, at the time, I was young and single and a little crazy, and I thought, well, he's the guy to send. You know what I mean? So I did that, and I got a chance to go and work and unpack all these really interesting things from, doing stuff that you understand. Actually, I was here at the Long Beach Aquarium. Wow, I've blown my mind. I forgot about that years ago. It's so cool. I went there on a Motorola project, and I learned by being there that, you guys will know there, if you go back, and you go there. If you hear on the intercom, bag lunch and tank 2 left, it means there's a dead fish in the tank. It means that some fish died and they got to dispatch somebody to get it. But if they say that on the intercom, all the little kids are like, let's go see the dead fish. And it starts to storm, right? You don't learn that stuff if you're not there. But when I was designing for stuff, also for Motorola, we were having failures in the field. We designed these radios that go inside of trucks and stuff for dispatch and trucking. And we're like, wow, why are they always failing in these one group? And it turned out that cement trucks don't have any suspension in them because they're so heavy. There's no spring that can hold a cement truck. So what they do is they put all the suspension in a seat. So the driver gets a nice ride. But the truck just rattles the crap out of the truck. The truck is just getting jackhammered by the weight of it. And these parts would fail, right, in this particular category of cement trucks. I also learned that if you throw a five-pound bag of sugar into a cement bucket, that cement will cure. And every cement truck out there has at least 1 or 2 bags of sugar in there, just in case they get stuck on the 405 in traffic and they want that cement to harden in the bucket. And when you learn that stuff by being there, you can design more empathetically to your audience. And whether that involves seeing people on 2 opposing sides of a warring nation and being empathetic to all that's happening there, which is so hurtful, to seeing the joy in a kid that's playing with the toy you made. Cool thing of being there could also be, at Fisher-Price, they had a daycare center there. It was really cool. And it was free. So if you had a kid, you got free daycare, but your kid was like a test, basically a test subject. There was a big glass, two-way mirror, right, at Fisher-Price. And when you design a toy, it has to go, of course, the prototype goes through a rigorous inspection process so that no kid can get hurt on it. But what they do is they put the toy on a shelf with all the other toys. So, you're there looking at your thing, and they let the kids in, and it's like, are they going to grab my thing? Are they going to like it? Are they going to play with it? It's super raw. The kids are so honest, and if the kids are fighting over your toy, you're thinking you got something there. But it was really neat to see that stuff. So whether it involves actually going there on location, or whether it's just going places to get your own inspiration, biomimicry for sure. I saw some cool stuff in there. Somebody's doing some walking stuff. I saw some cool stuff in the hall, by the way. It's good to be back and see all the energy. But being there is important. And sometimes you're going to be in your own head, and you're going to want to design stuff that you like or think is cool. You might, that's valid. But being there really is about being there for your customer. And understanding the context of use and what they care about. It's kind of like as I opened it, had a lot to do with being here for you, right? I didn't want to just turn through a presentation that you would care about or maybe not care about. So that maybe covers being there. But you picked the hardest one. That was probably the one I was least prepared to talk about. Hopefully that went okay. All right, how about another one? Yeah.
Yin and yang.
Yin and yang. Okay, thank you. I was hoping someone would pick that. It's one of my favorites. I kind of lived through the process of this thing where, outsourcing. When I did work at Fisher-Price, the factory that made the stuff that was on the shelf was across the street. And one of my first heroic design endeavors on a product that I designed was to refresh something that had already been in market. And I took 3 screws out, There's a cost engineer, right? And he's like, dude, you're a hero. Man, you're killing it here. Love that you did snaps and you got rid of that damn screw machine, right? And I went across the street, and this is like, months after the product had been tooled and released, closer to a year, And what's neat is I used to go over there and hang out with the guys in the different shift work and stuff. I always like to work late. I'm kind of a night guy anyway, and I would like to go over there and just see your stuff being made. It was cool, see stuff being produced and assembled, and cubicles with people's, family photos up, and talk to people on the line in English, and, it was neat. It was human, and it was local, and I could also bring people in. But, one of my pals down there, he goes, hey man, you designed this thing, didn't you? And I'm like, yeah, that was me, and I'm, a puffed up young guy, feeling good. Yeah, man, check it out. He goes, come here. And he goes, snap one of these together. I go, boom, no problem. Do another one. Okay, do another one. By the time I did about 8 or 10 or 12 or whatever, my hands were like, dude. He's like, yeah. And he patted me on the back and he goes, screw machine. And I go, all right, I got it. What's interesting about that and how this all ties back to the yin and yang is that there was a dynamism that existed between my thinking and doing. And it was, their doing helped my thinking. It was like this yin and yang. It was like, I'm going to go talk to the guys with the red rags in their back pocket that I like to drink beers with on Friday night. And they're going to, talk about all the crap that's going down in the factory, and they're going to razz me for being a designer, and I'm going to razz them back for, working in the factory, and we're just going to have a good time together. But we learn from each other. And think about it this way. If you're going to build a piece of furniture, right, and you're like, okay, I'm going to sketch that at the kitchen table, and maybe I go out to my wood shop and I start building, and around lunchtime, maybe hitting some challenges, right? Like maybe something I sketched isn't quite resolving it the way I want it to, or maybe the proportions look a little different than I thought they would, and I think I got to rethink this thing a bit. You go back and you start sketching, back at lunch and so forth, and then you're back in the wood shop, right? Until the sun goes down or whatever. But the thing is, like this iterative process of going back and forth, thinking and doing, and here's where things changed. For me personally, and probably for our nation, is that when I got to Motorola, and it first kind of happened in the consumer electronics space. It's not just them, but it sort of spread spectrum, like things changed, laws changed, objectives changed. But suddenly, like the dirty doing was something that could be lifted and shifted to somewhere else, right? Like, you know what, it'd be a lot better if we built this offshore where the labor's cheaper, right? And now my factory is 19 hours away. In Dongguan, Daomen, Shenzhen, doesn't matter, right? But the thing is, big separation from where it used to be across the street. So, what happened, right? Well, first we built a pilot line in North America, and then we boxed it and shipped it to, actually first Brazil, and then later China. But the point is, like, it didn't go well, okay? So, because they had no historical knowledge, they didn't really know what to do. So we would dispatch our best and brightest over there to go and help them in the beginning. But, you know, smart people everywhere, and they, you know, all over the place. And they started to figure it out, right? So when we gave away the dirty doing for labor, it almost, by necessity, the doing facilitates the thinking, right? So now you got a bunch of people thinking over here, got a bunch of people doing over here, and there's, you know, 14 hours different or whatever time frame between the two, right, whatever it is, and you kind of broke that symbiosis. So kind of astral project from the time I'm talking about when I personally experienced this. And by the way, guys, one thing is a disclaimer. I'm a factor of one, you know what I mean? So just take everything I say and just triangulate and use your own minds and brains to take it in what you agree or disagree with. But at the time this happened, when it went down, it was around the 94, 96 time frame, when this was kind of like, pretty much everything's over there, right? And now that building that was a factory, is being repurposed or sold or what have you, and now everything is, you know, a long plane ride away. But if you kind of astral project to where we are now, the major brands, and I won't call them out by name, practically all, and to me like US brands, they can't build a phone or a laptop or a television set or, you know, a damn toaster, right, without Taiwan and China or other branches of, you know, foreign labor. So that has been a big challenge for me personally, because I can hardly find anyone to hire who's even seen a factory in America, right? It's pretty rarefied, you know, but it wasn't when, and I turned 56 last week, so I'll give you a point of time, right? So I'm an old dude. But you know, when I was young, like everyone had factory experience. That's what you did. You either worked fast food or in a factory somewhere making stuff, and that option is really rarely available. But it made it really difficult because I felt like the designers that I started sourcing had never seen an injection molder or never seen a progressive die punch press or whatever it is that we did, and it was interesting, and it became really difficult because the education that I got from crossing the street when I was in my 20s, I couldn't give to another designer in my team without buying them a $5,000 plane ticket somewhere, right? And you can't send them there on their own for the first time, right? So it was really hard to train up and educate and enrich. Now remember, it's pre-YouTube and pre all that stuff, so you know it's different now, and we're much more globally connected. But still, you know, being there is right. No one's going to pat you on the back and say, screw machine on YouTube, right? They're not going to tell you what you screwed up when you design something that's wrong or doesn't work. So I think that the yin and yang of thinking and doing has a lot to do with that, and kind of how I would express it in terms of how I experienced it from being in proximity to the things that you think about and make and the collaboration that happened when I did do that. Now, the flip side is, you know, I've been offshore. I practically lived in China. I built a factory in Suzhou and spent a lot of time there and loved it. I mean, man, I watched. Let's do China in there. I don't know. Well, let me just bring it up. I mean, when I first went to China in '94, I went to Shenzhen, and you know, it was okay. It didn't look like any, like, whatever kind of city. I mean, it was just a city, you know, like any place you go. You go there now, it's Blade Runner. Like, you'll be shocked. The airport is amazing, and the towers have, you know, lobbies that you can fit a U.S. building inside. It's like amazing, you know. So I watched a whole nation, and I watched China in the process go from what I recall is sort of most, there's a lot of bicycles and a lot of smoky mopeds, and then suddenly there's like a lot of sedans. And I go there now, and it's like, dude, that's the third McLaren I saw go by. This is crazy, right? I mean, it's really changed. And if you're BMW, by the way, I did a lot of work with BMW Design Works, good folks over there. BMW now is designing for China. It's like, that's their market. It's like, why is the grill so big? And Americans are kind of bitching about that, honestly. They're like, I don't know, I'm share my own opinion about it. I'm kind of indifferent a little bit. But a lot of people don't, I mean, a lot of Americans don't like the aesthetics of BMW right now. And I'm like, yeah, it's just not for you. You know, that's not the market anymore, right? So it's crazy how many things have shifted in my 30-ish years of doing this. But that was one of the bigger ones. It's just watching everything change around you. And I think you guys are, of course, right in the middle of a tsunami of change, right? Which is a whole another topic. In case just so I don't forget, another thing to put on your radar. There's an IDSA conference coming up on how to use AI. It's April 3rd, I think. Go to idsa.org. I think it's like $200, and I bet you guys, I'll buy one. You could probably all huddle, and maybe take it all in. But I'm going to be on that. I'm not doing anything there. I need to learn like you do about these new tools. But I would recommend it for sure that you take it in. The people who are presenting are really solid. Scott Robertson especially is huge fan, really neat. So and put that on your radar for learning. That's probably the best $200 you could spend, and you could probably chip in, and I'll jump on one behind one monitor. All right, yin and yang. How's that going, by the way? You guys digging this so far? All right, good. I can't really tell. That's okay. Anyway, yeah, let's pick another one. Yes.
Startups and consulting.
China what?
Startups and consulting.
China and ODMs?
Startups and consulting.
Oh, startups. Oh, cool. Startups and consulting. You know, I have some experience with both. And boy, there's so much to unpack there. The first thing I'll tell you is, it seems like the stupidest advice to give, but I know a lot of designers, and I think the one thing we tend to have in common is that we're pretty empathetic people. And that I think the design a brighter world, you have to believe that a brighter world is possible, right? And then you kind of think, hopefully, positive about people and things. The one thing I can tell you is, man, do not advance in a startup unless your paper is inked. I'm telling you, I've been screwed big time by people I know and friends, dear friends that I thought I could trust and what have you. And not always, but startups are something that can really be amazing or really destructive depending on how it goes. The thing about a startup is, where are you in the startup? When I was a young kid, we had a little motorboat. It was kind of like kind of a joke, actually. It was like a little motorboat thing that my brother and I used to go out on. It was a little piece of crap, and but we had to pull this boat out. We had to like ramp up, and you trailer it out. And I used to tie up to this boat that I loved, this Tartan 10, 30-meter, beautiful, gorgeous sailboat. But I remember distinctly on the mast of the thing was an inscription that said, "Promises made in rough waters are forgotten in calm seas." And what that means is, you've been there, right? You've ever make a deal with whatever your faith is, like, oh, please don't let that happen, right? Don't, oh my gosh, and you're making deals with God or whatever, and you're making, but then like you get away with it, and then you're back to your old tricks or whatever. It's kind of like that, When you're in a startup, it's calm seas, and the things that you think are going to come together are forgotten in, rough water, or if they need you in rough waters, right? This is what I'm trying to say, forget that. If things are choppy, right, like not good, and you're like, hey man, like come just do this for us, and and we'll make you a part of it, and this is great, and there's no time to like get the deal done. Let's just, we're good, right? And you do all this work and everything, and then you find out you get into calm seas, and the shares that you thought you were going to have are suddenly not what they told you were going to have, or the promises that were made in rough waters are forgotten in calm seas. So my first bit of advice was, make sure you get your stuff tight, because it's in our nature to jump in. It's in our nature to want to make the world a better place, and that's a good thing, and I'd never take that away from you. I give you more of it. But be careful, because it can be pretty hard to go through that, and that's one thing I would say in startups. But startups can also have the opportunity to give you tremendous equity. I have a startup, and actually a couple. One of them is in England, and it's in the technology space. It's in the graphene space, which we could talk about later if you want. But I invested like all in this thing, and I'm thinking, what could go wrong, right? This is amazing. And then a war happened in Ukraine, and then COVID happened, right? And suddenly it's like, technology budgets just went poof, right? Consulting budget, poof. People were saying, I had a client like Procter & Gamble, right? And they spend $6 billion a year on just advertising. It's crazy. But they were saying, we don't want to stimulate demand for any product. We can't even get the product we need. So it was like someone hit the emergency brake on innovation. Everything I was doing in the innovation sector was disrupted. So my can't lose, man, we're riding a yes train, like there's nothing that can go wrong, this is going to be awesome. Suddenly it was like 2 events happened, and it went right off the rails. It's changing, actually. Thankfully, things have turned around for both. But, high risk, high reward in the startup sector. If you get involved with a startup, now look, if you need a job and there's a startup and you can get in there and you can get experience, of course do it. But let's just say you're in a place and, startups by their nature are very seductive. It's their job to seduce you into believing into what they have and believing in it. And you might be like, wow, what could go wrong? That's such a cool idea, what have you. But things do go wrong or right. And either way, you want to make sure you're protected, because the upside could be tremendous if you're smart about it. And that's if you're smart about it and you have a job and they want you. And this is what I didn't do effectively is, have you seen the Blackberry movie? Have you seen that? Cool. I lived through that whole thing. I was in that bullpen of people in that documentary. Only I wasn't the guy who asked for $10 million. That guy, that didn't happen to me, man. What happened? Like, somebody got that. But, like what you ask for, if you're going to be put into a thing, it has a lot to do. Or, obviously, that is when after they were no longer a startup. They were a bona fide company at that point. But my point is, if you're getting into a startup, make sure you get in terms that you like and you understand what you're in for, and then plan for the long haul, because there's a lot of forces of nature that you can't control, whether it's wars or diseases or what have you, or disruptors, or another company comes out with something first. And if you're going to leave a sort of a established company to go into a riskier startup, if you can take that risk and it's worth it to you, then do it. But make sure that the risk is worth the reward if you get involved in it. And make sure you're not seduced by the allure of what the offering might be. Because there's a lot of headwinds that come into play and really triangulate well. Like, you kind of know. Like, when I knew it wasn't quite right, I kind of knew. But because I wanted to do it so bad, I kind of talked myself into it. And there's a little bit of that. On the consulting side, the consulting thing is also kind of difficult. It can be great. But here's what I learned about consulting, like some of the tricks that are played. My goodness. When I was running consultancy, I'm pretty dialed in. I used to run the IDSA back in the day, so I pretty much have a good beat on the other agencies and so forth in the area, or at least in the U.S. And I'd get a project and it'd be like, okay, cool, we got company X. They're gonna give us $5,000, right, to do this project to possibly win the bid. They want us to do like a little blitz project. And you go, okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna give them like 25 grand worth of work just to secure the deal, right? We're gonna take it into shorts. We're gonna do like 25K work because we wanna win that business, right? That could be a long-term big winner for us. Like if we pulled in a big company, it'd be worth it, you know, long-term. It's like, we call it an evergreen client. Like if you get one of these cherry clients that's like, you know, cashed up and they can keep you going for a long time, it's an ideal client versus a one and done. And then I would get the wind that, you know, wow, man, they did this with a bunch of different people, right? So let's just say they've got let's just say somebody has 25K in their budget for consulting. They might just peanut butter that 25 out, 5K at a time, and get 25 grand worth of work out of a bunch of different agencies, and all these agencies got their pocket picked, right? Nobody got anywhere. That kind of stuff happens. Nobody ever talks about that, but it does happen. So there's something to be aware of, but running a consultancy is really difficult because you have to carry the OpEx expenditure of what you're, you have to make payroll. And I won't kid you, there was times I'm like, man, I really miss my W-2 job because it's really hard. You know, especially when you got somebody who's, you might be into it for a project, maybe let's just say you got 30, 40 grand into a project, but you can't do that yourself. You have other people that you have on your payroll, and you probably have some other services you bought, and then you got a prototype that you paid $1,500 for, and so on and so on. So maybe you got out of that 40 grand or whatever, maybe your take is 20 of it, or less, and the client doesn't pay. And you're like, dude, your net 30 is net 60, what gives? And you're like, oh man, we're in chapter 11, sorry. And you're like, wow, you just ate it, right? And then you're going, this is not cool. And then you got to make the decision, like, I got to pony up and pay my friends that did all this work, and and that stuff is really hard. So, what I found is like consulting, I like startups and all that stuff. It's really good to get your terms in order. And it's probably something that nobody talks about or they don't really teach in any school that I'm aware of, but find someone you trust that can kind of look things over or help guide you. I mean, I'm not good at it, but I didn't know I wasn't good at it. I just thought, I'm good, I'm a good person, and good will happen. And that's not universally true. So things like, if things do go bad, what's your terms for getting out of a startup? Like, is it one day you show up and they're like, we can't make payroll, I'm sorry, you're done, the lights are out? Or can you put a stop on that to say, I need to know 3 months in advance, so that I can at least wiggle my way out of this and possibly stand on my feet or at least prepare. So get your terms sorted, get your stuff papered up, trust but verify. I think Reagan said that, I think. Anyway, do the things, trust your instincts about who it is you're getting involved with, and make sure you can cover the spread. It's really difficult when you get, when you have that bad things happen. But on the other hand, though, being a consultant can also be pretty liberating as well if it's going well. You have a lot of flexibility. Often you can be the guy who kind of swoops in, person that swoops in and gets to make a lot of change. Sometimes I would hire consultants when I worked in a corporation, and I have to say, I just had to bring in a consultancy because nobody believed us. When I say us, it would be the internal design team. But if a consultant comes in from a fancy place, or they wear big stupid glasses, people believe you, or they believe them. And it's like, we've been saying this for 2 years that we should do this product. This is called consultancy, just blew in here, and suddenly like, we got to do this. And you're like, yeah. So sometimes like consultants have a different type of impact. And it's kind of cool if you are a consultant to kind of reach into a company and make change. But on the other hand, like, the one thing that I never really enjoyed about being a consultant is that you sort of don't get a chance to live through it. Like, your job kind of ends at the time, like, you don't get a chance to go through the seasons of development, to see the first shots off the tool, to, see what the prototype box looks like, to, see the Marcom team building out the story, those types of things. And I think that's what I really enjoy, is that I feel in the company, I'm much more part of a family that gets involved from end to end versus a consultant that sort of flies in like a pigeon and flies out. And that I do enjoy much more for me personally, but They all have their pluses and minuses. So that maybe covers, I don't know. Any specific questions? Yes.
So when you say to protect or to get your terms in order, do you mean as in like contracts?
Oh, hold on. I ride a lot of motorcycles. I think my hearing's
Oh
not so good.
no, I'm so sorry.
That's cool.
So when you say to get your terms in order, do you mean like contracts?
Yes.
Getting your equity?
Yeah, for sure. Know your equity. Know what your terms are. Like, trust but verify. Like, make sure that you know what you're in for. Because like you guys are creative. You're valuable, right? And somebody who needs, it's like this. If I got a flat tire and you can help me change it, right? And I can't roll without you, right? You have tremendous value in that moment. It's called, oh my gosh, I got a car full of groceries and ice cream, and it's all going to be melted. This is going to be terrible. And then like a nice person comes over and like, let me help you, right? That is the calm seas, or that's the rough waters, right? And you're on your road, and it's like they say, hey, that was great, thank you. This is amazing. Trust me, when this is good, we're all going to get rich. It's going to be amazing. This is going to be wonderful. And then it happens, and guess what? 3 people got rich, and it ain't you, right? So I'm just saying, I've had that happen. It felt really crappy, especially when it's our nature to give. It's our propensity to give. And if you're a designer, you have sort of almost I don't know, it's like an obligation, but a good one, to like make life better in some way, enrich or bring a smile to someone or whatever, just bring joy to the world. And I think if you want to do that, and that's part of your human nature, it's part of the creative process, it's a tremendous value when somebody wants it and needs it. And when they're in calm seas, it's like you could be devalued, and like you weren't really that much of a part of it, or we could have used whatever, Dolly to do it or whatever. Like suddenly everything you did becomes marginalized. There's a power negotiation thing there. It's not a polite one, but you're all adults. It's called the call girl syndrome. It has to do with why people in the sex industry get their money up front. After services are rendered, the propensity to pay goes way down. Not my saying, Richard Dawson saying, books on tape. I was probably 18 when I heard that, but I remembered it. And you know what, I remembered it in my head. I didn't apply it in my own practice. So whenever I try to do nice things for people, they're like, hey man, like help me, like we need you, and you do it. And it's not in my nature to drive away. You know what I mean? If I see someone in a ditch, I want to help. And I think that's human nature, and I wouldn't want to change that. I couldn't change that. But it hasn't always served me well. So that's what I think I would leave you with, and that there's a moment or time when you will be of tremendous value, and that will have a sunset, right? There'll be a bell curve on that. And the time to negotiate and get what you want is not at the bottom of the bell curve. It's at the zenith of that, the apex of that. Make sense? Cool. Thanks for asking, by the way. I want this to be interactive. So if there's things that I'm touching upon that are igniting ideas or thoughts, please don't be shy. I'm here for you. Cool. All right, let's pick another topic.
Burning Man.
All right. Burning Man, the nonsensical. All right, so I could talk about this one a lot. I knew about Burning Man, for a long time, and I looked at it and I thought, it's kind of hippy-dippy and whatever, and, it felt like something people would do who, like, need to be creative, like the kind of pipe bender kind of, like, project thing, and I thought, that's not really for me. But I had a bunch of people that I worked with, and they were really smart dudes, and it was sort of like we all went different places, and they're all engineers, mostly. They were like Stanford and MIT guys that I got a chance to work with. What a joy it was to work with these brilliant minds, so cool. And they became dear friends of mine, and I'm so not like them, but they're also very cool and creative engineers, and they said, well, screw it, you got to get out there. Like, we're all going to be there. You have to go. I go, okay, cool, I'll go. And it was amazing. I did it in 2010, and it was the most amazing experience. I don't really do things twice normally unless I really love it. And I don't follow any sports or anything because I'm too impatient, or too restless to kind of settle in. But I really love Burning Man. It really was neat in a way that I didn't expect. And that is, in some respects, well, first let me ask you, do you guys know what Burning Man is? I'm assuming you do. Because my mom, who's not fast, she would be like, what are you doing in Birmingham? I know it's Burning Man. She's like, oh, anyway, for those of you who don't know, it's this big festival in the desert. And it happens every Labor Day, so it's end of August, early September. And the thing about Burning Man is it's not really about Burning Man, really. The man is sort of the most insignificant thing of Burning Man. It's more like this amazing built city. And man, it is like the best playground for industrial design. I mean, or architecture, or technology. It is just a gasm of that stuff. Because everybody is self-assembles in this desert, which is like nothing but a dry lake bed. And I'm not assuming you haven't been there. A lot of people think it's sand. It's not sand. It's like a silty type of like dry lake stuff. So it's actually 600 times more fine than sand. So if I hit you with a bucket of sand, it would be unpleasant, But if you have your goggles and your scarf on, right, you shake it off like a wet dog and you'd be fine. But if I hit you with a bucket of playa dust, it would go right into your pores of your clothes, into your skin, and your camera. It gets everywhere. So you have to imagine this kind of almost post-apocalyptic moonscape, right? And it's a hard place to be. It's a hard place to live. What's fascinating about it is, I lived in Austin for a long while. There's a lot of great outdoor shows there. It's Music City. And I'd go to like a big show. I'm kind of an EDM freak anyway, and I love to make and produce music when I can. And, being out there in Austin, I'd go to a big show. And like when I'm leaving, it's like I'm wading through like trash. There's trash everywhere, And at Burning Man, like there's no trash cans. Like you're responsible for bringing your own stuff in and out. So when you go there, and you could be super tired, and maybe you just party till sunset, and you call a really good DJ set, and the sun's come up, and you want to just get to camp, get some sleep as much as you can before the sun comes up too high and it gets too hot to do anything. And it could be like 105 in the daytime and like close to freezing at night, or maybe freezing. So the range is crazy. So it goes from like being in your maybe nothing, it's of your choice, but whatever you're into, you can wear that in a day, but by night, you're kind of like wearing a fur coat and just having, it's just really wild. But if you see something on the ground, right, it must be of value. So you might be like riding your bike, and all you want to do is get home to get some rest, and you're like, damn it, man, there's like something over there, and it's trash. And the ethos of Burning Man is called move matter out of place. So if you see something that's on the ground, you pick it up. So, like it's crazy. My neighbor's like, hey man, is that you out there with like the thing, like picking up trash on the side of the road? I'm like, yeah man, that's me, I got my little grabber thing, And I just bring this ethos back with me. But so if you go see something, it's a piece of trash somewhere, and you ride your bike, chances are it's going to be like a helmet light, or something of value, or a knife, or some piece of equipment, or something that somebody dropped. But it's amazing that you could have close to 80,000 people assemble in a city, and there's not a stitch of litter anywhere, and that people are really self-reliant and respectful to the earth and how they treat it. But what's really neat about it is that it's hard to live out there. And if of course, there's like the Google guys bring out their like Willie Nelson tour buses that are like, pre-core whatever, and they're making $1 million. There's that. But for most burners, they're kind of doing it kind of raw. So they're kind of either tenting it or building a dome. I build a geodesic dome, cover it with a giant cargo parachute, and live out there for a week, like on the on the playa in the desert, bringing my own water, all that stuff. But when you're out there with a team of people, the hardships that you face, it's not a vacation. So just don't even think of it as a vacation. It's an adventure. And the thing is, like, my wife has gone with me a couple times. She's like, I need a vacation after Burning Man. Because it's just it's work. It's a lot of work. But what's neat is when you solve problems with other people, you can know somebody in a week better than, like, I have a bunch of friends that I like to stay connected with, and like when we go to dinner, it's like we always talk about what's going on in the world, and we fight over who pays for the check and all that stuff. It's good, right? But it's different when you're figuring out how to survive a big storm that's coming your way, or how to like help a bunch of other people make their art project come to life because you happen to know something, like a skill that they could use, and then you're part of it. So I really think the problems to solve out there and the environment, and if you're not into electronic music, it might not be for you, but it's not all that. The music is amazing, and the community's amazing, but the spirit of the nonsensical is what kind of holds it all together. I mean, people just do stuff to blow your mind, you know, and it's sometimes, some stuff's really small, you know, and some stuff is unbelievable. Like, you know, a 4-story statue of a beautifully, you know, woman, feminine form with a respiratory system in it. When you're, you know, the thing is, nobody tells you, hey man, like, stand behind the velvet ropes and read the little placard. You know, if you want to climb it, climb it. It's like, it's so cool. You can climb these giant pieces of sculpture and these giant pieces in the middle of the desert and watch the sunrise. And it feels really neat to be there. It feels like a world that is either, it feels like a prototype of the future. That's what I would call it. Because in some respects, it's kind of post-apocalyptic. It's like if something happened, a solar flare or whatever it is that set us way back, like this is how life would want to self-assemble. So there's this joyfulness about it, but then there's also kind of other polarity that says, wow, we got to come all the way out here to the middle of nowhere to do this. And when you come back to what burners typically call the default, and you're standing and you're pumping gas for the first time and you smell like a goat because you've been taking shower bag stuff and you just can't wait to get to a real shower and eat real food, you know. There's so much in that, but when you're there and you see trash blowing across and you see the headlines and stuff, you'll really be longing for what they call home. They call Burning Man home. They all say welcome home because it's like a special place. And also the temple. If you're into architecture, it's worth it. I mean, the only other place I've actually experienced that kind of spiritual power was at the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, where you're like, I don't care what your faith is. You go there, you're like, man, this place is powerful. Like you can feel it. And you really feel that in this thing they build called the temple. And the temple is a structure that they make at Burning Man that is really to honor, you know, people that you lose, mostly lost. And I had this year, I went early, and I like to go early and be part of the complete build out of the city and participate in that. And when I was there, I had the chance to experience the temple this year when it was empty. So, but to kind of give you some context, when you go there, they'll pin stuff up, like, you know, like people will bring things, you know, pictures and poetry and artifacts of people and things. And I had a chance to be in there when it was empty. And it was architecturally gorgeous, really neat. And then when but it was, I appreciated it architecturally. But then when I came back and it had been filled, different experience to be had, super powerful. So there's some vectors there that you might not get. If you just kind of topographically look at Burning Man, you're going to see everything that's cool to photograph, you know, and the crazier or the more interesting, the better. But it's a pretty soulful experience, and there's a lot of problems to solve, and you'll just love solving those problems if you're into it. You know, like, and a lot of the things that I developed in Burning Man ended up having transmissive value in the default world. One of those is a type of coding that I developed, which involves like just using powdered iron, right? This is a great hack for you guys if you want to do simulated steel or iron on a product. You can take a $3 clay pot, paint it with some glue, and bread it like a chicken with powdered iron, and let it rust. And everyone will think it's a cast iron pot or whatever you have, whether it's something you 3D printed or whatever. But it's a really cool effect. And you know, I developed that by trying to come up with a light way to do something steel, right? To do like how to take weight out of something, or how to solve particular problems. So to be creative in a nonsensical way, you know, you guys probably wouldn't know him, but he's kind of a legend. But he was a mentor of mine, and I'm so grateful to know him. His name's Bill Buxton. He's one of the chief scientists at Microsoft right now. And I got to know him when he was less important and more reachable. But what a cool dude. And he told me when I was coming up, he goes, take 20% of your time. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Take 20% of your time and do something interesting or nonsensical. And I can't recommend that enough. Please write that one down or tattoo your brain with it, whatever it takes. Take whatever you're doing, keep 20% in the gas tank for you, like purely for you. And I say this because you're always going to be asked to do stuff, and everyone will fill the time you have. Whether it's later obligations with family or, work will take every drop that you give them, right? But whether it's like working on, whatever it is you're into on a deep level, and explore, and go search and do stupid things and fall down. I worked a little in Japan. I don't think I put Kyocera on my thing, but I actually did that too. I worked for this company out of Japan, and I had an office in Yokohama, and I'd get to every once in a while. And I learned something really interesting about the Japanese culture. Two things really that I would share. One is that, in America, I don't know about Europe, but at least in America, being new, like being a noob or a newbie or whatever, a novice, right? Like, that's not so becoming, Like, let's just say you pick up a guitar and like it sounds horrible and you'd be embarrassed and you're like, you get laughed at or whatever it is that you try, right? But in Japanese culture, being new at something is really heroic. It's like you have the courage to try. And I think it's human nature because we're electric beings, we're electrical beings, right? It's in our nature to go to ground, right? That's the shortest path, the least resistance. Like you want to ground out, like, I'm not good at that, or I don't know how to do that, or I don't know, but you don't really know what you're capable of until you really explore the boundary conditions of what you think you're capable of. And you might unlock some hidden powers or superpowers you didn't even know you had. And to do that, you got to do, whether it's Burning Man, which kind of consumed me for 11 years, and then I went from a guy camping in a one-man tent, with the gear I could fit on a plane, to having, 53-foot-long trailers full of gear and 1,700 square feet of shade space, and people coming in from all over the world to be part of my space, and curated with the coolest people that you could imagine that I met on the playa. The other thing about Burning Man, kind of taking it back to then, is like you will find your people there. Like it's a lot of us, and nobody wants to talk about football or anything like that. I mean, it's a really cool, weird, nerdy place to go where people do neat stuff. And I'm not knocking football or anything like that, but I'm saying it's not a sports bar environment. You know what I mean? It's a special place for interesting people. And if you want to connect with interesting people doing special things, like Elon Musk used to go, I never personally met him. I actually met Paris Hilton there, of all people. Not by choice, it just happened to happen. But you'll meet tech people go there. And what I love and what I hope you do, I've had abundance in my life and lost it all, gained it back again, lost some more of it. You know what I mean? It's like there's this thing happening in life. But if I ever really make crazy dough, I'm not buying a boat or a Ferrari. I'm going to do something really cool at Burning Man to give some experience that would be super cool and enriching to other people. Like that's what I would do. And I think if more people thought that way, but I think the people that need to go, most of all, are some of the people who would be the least likely candidates. I think Newt Gingrich went, some politician, and he said it was like the prototype city of the future of of what culture could be like. He called it culture 2.0. And that's what I would say. But whether or not you go, it may not be for you, it's not for everybody. But the takeaway is do nonsensical things. Whether it's cosplay or model making or music or whatever, just find your jam and do it for you, and then everybody will be better off, mostly you. But there'll be a lot of transmissive value to all the other things, touch points in your life. It worked that way for me. It's not my own deal. I was told to do that, and he grabbed me and said, Frank, I know you. You'll be that guy who never looked up from his page and didn't go to the aquarium with your friend or whatever, right? I'd just be head down, always working. And I think that kind of had been a transformative experience in terms of how much value I got by doing other things that were related and kind of supplemental to my design experience. Make sense? Cool. Especially now, you can 3D print stuff. You can, it's so neat what could happen in space. But find your jam and make sure you own it, and don't let anyone take it away from you. All right, cool. Next one. Let's figure
Instrument, not ornament.
Okay, so instrument, not ornament, is one that was really inspired by my wife. She's a nutritionist and holistic coach. So meals are so super tasty at her house, but they're always healthy, right? So when I come here and I travel, I'm like having gluten and pizza and all this stuff, you know, kind of going off the rails. And but you know, here's the deal. Like you're in your debatably like in your prime right now, right? Like you're full of energy and vitality and using those things, and you know, and it's really easy to take that for granted because you know the aging process happens, and you've got to manage for the long haul. And I can't tell you how many people I've come across who might have tremendous abundance in their life, but they are riddled with disease, or they just kind of treated their brains like their bodies are just an instrument to carry, or just a, you know, something to carry their brain around, you know, and they didn't take care of themselves. And I think one thing that is really difficult for really driven people is to maintain a healthy balance. It's really difficult because, like, you know, when it's almost like a badge of courage to eat from the vending machine. Like let's just say you get into a corporate world, right? It becomes this arms race of like, who's hardcore, right? Like how hard can you work? How much can you go? How much can you sacrifice? And it's really hard to maintain a balance of your body and mind when you're in that. And what happens is you might even, it's not like you have a really good barometer of where you are in your ability to think clearly and, you know, articulate your thoughts or be your best self. And I think that there's not enough emphasis put on, your body's not an ornament. We all want to look good, but it's really an instrument. And you got to treat it like, you know, you wouldn't leave your laptop out in the rain, would you? Right? But, you know, you probably do a lot of things to your body that are not so good. And I'm not saying I'm like, you know, not without guilt here. It's sort of preaching to whatever they say, right? I'm guilty of that myself in a big way. But generally, I try to stay healthy, and I can't really recommend enough that time goes by really quickly, and like how, you know, what you do now counts. So take care of yourself, and don't take pride in eating from the vending machine, or don't be that person. I can't tell you what to be. That's your choice. But I'm just telling you, I haven't seen it play out well for the people who always kind of laughed at us for being kind of the granola crunchy nerd people, right? And you know, you project 10 years, and then your friends are not in a good place. And you're kind of thankful that you made the decisions you made when you're in your point in time now. So whether that's like nourishing both your body and your mind and your spirit, and not taking that for granted, please, because it's easy to do, and you're in a point in time now where it's super easy to do because you're not going to feel it. You know, I couldn't go out and party like I used to and not feel it. You probably can, but I'm saying, like, just be good to your human body. It's important. And you know, you get into a job and a career, and then you have family or spouse, whatever it is, like stuff will suck up the time and it'll crowd you out. And it's really important to carve out. Again, this is kind of like that 20%, right? Like that 20, whatever your thing is, but make sure that's at least part of it, conscious part of it, because it's never talked about. I never hear about it. Like I just see, like, I go to I've been in so many conference rooms and you know, and all around the world and country, and there's always like M&Ms and soda. You know what I mean? And when you're living on the road and you have a dynamic career, and you're going in and out of airports, and you have a lot of dynamism in your life, there isn't a lot of time, or even sometimes even less, there isn't even access to good stuff to take care of yourself. And what you can find is on the wrong side of a health condition, and then you're not really going to be good to anybody. So it's kind of one that I would say, it's a little bit preachy. I don't mean to do that. It's advice. I just think it served me well. And I would say, I'd pass that on to you to say, your body's not an ornament, it's an instrument. It's as important as anything you have, more important. We're the only things that run without power. Right? Think about it. Right? That's it. You know, AI, anything else, it's like you're the only things that runs without power. So take care of your own power, be your own energy source, and treat it like, you're shoveling coal into the right furnace, right? You wouldn't shovel dirt in there. You wouldn't shovel garbage in there. So be mindful of that because it matters, and it also can also have a lot to do with where you are in your head, psychically, mentally, just where you are. And that's, I think, really important. It's a short one, but important one. All right, another one. Yes? On stage. Well, here I am on stage. And I hope you guys are enjoying this. But I had a really good mentor, a guy named Bruce Claxton. He's retired, but really, really good human. And, I was really shy when I got in my first design career. I grew up in Cleveland, and I never really had a lot of exposure to corporate life, and I kind of left my way into a design scholarship or art scholarship. And suddenly I'm with people not my people. You know what I mean? I'm like people who, went to fancy schools and used big words, and I was a essentially shy guy, young guy at the time, and I was painfully shy. I could never have imagined doing this, right? And I've done this for, 700, 800 people in a room or whatever. It's crazy. And it's hard to be the person standing the wrong way in a crowded room. It's really scary, It's always scary. I was nervous to do this. I won't lie to you. It's always nerve-wracking. It always gives me the butterflies. But that's what's good about it. It's just when you feel alive doing it. So, he had the best advice. He said, come with me and help me teach night school at this local art college in Fort Lauderdale. And, suddenly I kind of came out of my shell a little bit, and I started realizing I kind of liked it. I thought what scared me, Jesus, suddenly I'm doing it. And that was, 25 years ago, but now I can do it at a big level. And, I could do it without much anxiety or worry. But it really is about developing courage. Scare yourself, fail, it's okay. 100 years from now, nobody you know on this planet is going to know you or remember you or care. So what are you worried about, right? Put it out there. You got nothing to lose, really, right? I mean, what do you got to lose? Your pride, and don't do stupid stuff. I'm not saying don't torch your career. Be smart, of course, right? But there's going to be things that are going to push you into uncomfortable places, and it's interesting. I did a lecture, a bunch of years ago, about 3 or 5 years ago. I did one at Savannah College of Art and Design, and I don't know how I was talking about a book. I highly recommend. Okay, there's 2 books I would definitely check out. The Culture Code and The Fourth Turning. Holland Strauss, I think. Anyway, Fourth Turning, audiobook it, put it in your headphones, and rock that out. And here's another one. Everything by Robert Greene. Must. Yes.
Is the book called Everything, or is it just all of his content?
Oh, no. All of everything Robert Greene ever wrote, 40 Laws of Power, Art of Seduction. This stuff is about the human brain, okay? This is really important because we're designing for culture. We have to know the interoperability and mechanisms of how people work. And here's something I do a lot of. I listen to a lot of books about human psychology. It's fascinating. There's these kind of things where people will write in, my husband will just not cut the grass, or, he's buying sports cars and fancy clothes or whatever. And it's and the psychologist is he's not pair bonded, right? Pair bonding behavior would mean he'd be out buying bark chips for the shrubs and paint for the wall. There's human behavior. If you understand the context of behavior, right? And what's really cool, and I'll give you one little token of the book, and then I'll get back to the on-stage thing a little bit. This is a really cool little corridor. The Jeep Wrangler, which is Chrysler's most, by far, successful platform, was almost killed. It was going to be killed in the 70s sometime. And this is in the Culture Code, the story. But, the book rather. They hired this guy who understood human psychology. And he looked at the product and he said, well, at the time Jeep had gone from round headlights to square ones. And I don't know, you're probably not good. Here's the thing, now that I've told you that, and remember my friend Toko did the Rivian light, so don't forget him. That makes me think of him. But the Jeep Wrangler at one point in time in history had square headlights. And this guy from the Culture Code, who is, I can't remember his name, French guy with like 10 syllables in his last name. So anyway, he said, well, here's your problem. You need to put the headlights round again. And he said, why? He said, well, when you put the square headlights, when you went from round, which was the classic, if you've ever seen any old army movie, it's like they had this, the Jeeps kind of look like, they do now, essentially. But at that point, they went from that round headlight to a square one in the 70s sometime. He said, you dehumanize the car, and he said, look, go back to the round headlights. And of course, everyone at Chrysler was like, yeah, it's like airy-fairy, whatever, like no one was taking them seriously. But one of the accountants in there was responsible for cost, said, well, the round headlights are cheaper. And they said, well, if they're cheaper, then okay, fine. Go with the round headlights, okay? So, but they didn't stop there. He said, to humanize the vehicle, basically what the Jeep Wrangler is in our culture is the American horse, okay? It basically, it's different in Europe, because in Europe, the iconic Jeep liberated a culture from its darker self. Right? So that's why the Jeep had the Jeep Liberty. That's how the brand was. It was like basically, when you saw a Jeep coming, it meant like friendly Americans or whatever were coming, right? They were on the right side. So a different culture code there for when you see a Jeep in Europe, when you see a Jeep here. But the point remains the same. And when it was dehumanized with square headlights, he said the first thing we need to do is shoot the Jeep commercial as if it were a horse. So they shot the commercial in the way you would see, like, some kid, like his dog fell down a ravine or something like this, and in a commercial, right? The way they shot the commercial. And the kid gets on his bike and he rides, and asking, hey, help, 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 whatever. And he comes across this helpful guy in his Jeep, and they take the Jeep over to the ravine, and the Jeep guy rescues the dog, and the dog and kid are loving embrace. And then the Jeep goes off into the sunset. But you could have taken all that, what just happened, and take the Jeep out of the scene and put a horse into it, and it would have worked, right? Same story. Right? So the Jeep played the character of a horse. It was like, and after that, the Jeep sales took off. So there's more at stake, more in play than just a physical artifact of what you're designing. There's a deeper, richer cultural thing there. And when you understand human behavior, if you're curious about it, it's so cool to understand. It's like, why? Here's another example, a personal one that I lived through. I mentioned to you that I designed a lot of communications gear for Motorola, and if you go to the airport or whatever and you see the Motorola radios, they're still using the stuff I designed like back in '98. It's cool to see it still in service. It has tremendous service life. And aside from the thing, like there's things on there like the man down switch is always at the base of the antenna, right? So you learn this stuff because when you realize you're working with firefighters or whatever, somebody could fall through a floor and the only thing they can do is hit that button. If they can't find it, there's a life lost. So, of course, there's very pragmatic things about the physical design and user interface. You can get what's called situational disability, where, like, things you do all the time, all of a sudden, like, poop hits the fan and you just freeze, you don't know what to do. That happened to my wife during an earthquake. I had to give her a fireman's carry out of it. She just, froze. She didn't know what to do. Anyway, it happens to people, everybody, some people. But anyway, the point is, so I'm designing these policemen, firemen, military radios for communication purposes. And I'm doing research on these different users. And let's just say generally, I don't want to be stereotypical or disparaging, but generally cops in the US did not look like the calendar cops that you might imagine, right? 30, 50 pounds overweight, not very fit. Their body is definitely not an instrument, even though their job would command that it is. You go to Europe, it's different. I mean, they look like the calendar cops. These dudes are buff. They're doing chin-ups during the whatever. But here's what's really interesting about their taste and aesthetics. North American cops at the time, around 98, a long time ago, right? But it's a real story. They wanted their stuff to look like Terminator or RoboCop or whatever. They wanted this paramilitary AK-47 look. They wanted their radios to look like they could kill you, right? And I'm like, dude, you look like you had a lot too many donuts or whatever. That's cool, but that doesn't really reflect who you are, right? But the dudes in Europe, the same municipalities, say cops mostly, they wanted their stuff to look suave. They wanted it to look sweet, sensual, beautiful, right? They wanted it to look like a cell phone. It's like, well, wait a minute, you guys look like a real army dude. Like, you want something that looks like a cell phone, and you guys who look like you couldn't chase me across the street want something that looks like, Terminator would carry it or whatever. It's very interesting. So I had to develop a platform where it's called postponement, where you make the same product, right? And then you dress it up with different aesthetics at the very end of the line. So the answer to that was, how do we serve two distinct markets in two disparate places with the same electrical mechanical package, right? So that you could have two flavors on the same thing. And that's how we solved that problem. But here's another one sort of about being there. It's kind of going back to being there. I didn't mention this, but kind of doubling back because it's kind of relevant. When I was at Motorola, another group had designed a cell phone for China, and it had a full round top on the top, and a square bottom. And it's right priced and everything, and the design group was somewhat perplexed as to why it wasn't selling. They kept dropping the price, and like, we don't get it. It's just not moving. What's up? So they dispatched us out there to go try to figure it out. And at first, it was hard to figure out. But what we learned is that it looked like a casket, like a casket that was kind of common in China. And it would be like as if someone in China designed a cell phone that looked like an American coffin. You'd be like, well, it's kind of creepy, actually, right? It had the wrong iconic shape and structure because it wasn't contextually relevant to the culture it was serving, right? So, anyway, where was this one about on stage? I can't remember where I was. I kind of wandered, but anyway, I told you that would happen. But definitely check out those books. Push yourself into uncomfortable places. It's okay to fail, and don't regret it. Yeah, shake it off, if you have to, and but look, we're born to make mistakes. Make them quickly, and manage your risk. But it's kind of like if you I go to Las Vegas a lot. I'm not a Las Vegas guy, but there's a lot of trade shows there, so I've been there more times than I can remember. But I always put the money I'm prepared to lose in one pocket. I'm not going to bet my wedding ring or my mortgage, right? But I'm prepared to lose $40, $50. It's not going to kill me. Whatever you're prepared to wager, right? Put something on the table, man. Like, don't sit it out, because no one is going to do it for you. But don't bet the farm either, right? Bet what you were prepared to lose. Like, if you try something, I kind of go all in on stuff. That doesn't always work for me. But just put something on the table. Do what your jam is. And if you find yourself saying things like, I could never do that, or that isn't me, right? That's the dashboard on your mental brain that's saying, you're going to put that red light out or do something about it. You're going to keep on driving with this belief system that says you can't do it. I'm telling you, I didn't come from much. When I was a hood rat tagging trains in Cleveland, I did that because I wanted my stuff to go out into the world, and I thought I'd never see it, But now I'm putting stuff out in the world, and I'm loving it. It's so fun. And it's so neat, I got to tell you, there's nothing better sometimes than like knowing you were part of something that was meaningful to other people. Like going down some random road, in some suburban area and seeing kids jump through a sprinkler you designed. I mean, that's freaking cool. And I want you guys to experience that. And you have the talent, and you're here to do that kind of stuff. But it's not going to come to you. No one's going to give it to you. No one's going to make it easy. But it's there for the courageous. So scare yourself. All right, next one.
What's the deal with graphene?
Graphene. Okay, so, I'm such an idiot in some respects because I grew up in the internet age. I saw it all happen. I was part of it. I'm like, so I mentioned like that when I came into design, like CAD was new. You know, like we were learning, like I graduated college with like a drafting board, you know, and blueprints, like on vellum. And then this thing called CAD happened, and I just watched people kind of ignore it, you know. A lot of old guys like my age who were like, I don't want to do that, and anyway. But the point about things like, but there was a revolution first in like tools and internet and connectivity. You know, I got to tell you guys, like for real, like I used to work to the cadence of the FedEx truck, okay? Like pre-email, and this is crazy because this feels like dinosaur stuff for you guys, and it is. But I'm just only sharing with the established context. Like back when I did design and we did things manually mostly, like computers could do CAD, but they were mostly engineering when I got started in the early 90s. Like, but they didn't render. So at best, you can take a printout or a plot of a 3D part and trace it and transfer it onto some boards and do a rendering of it. But you know, like anything, it was like you had to get your work out. You had to get it somewhere. And that was always metered by the FedEx truck. And hand to God, we used to chase a FedEx truck down the street because you would want to put that last bit, you know, spit shine on that rendering and roll it up in a tube and like, dude, this FedEx truck's coming, the FedEx, and you're like, you know, and we used to just blitz to the FedEx truck, and then that was it, you know. And then my day was like off. Everything was like power off, like, you know, there was nothing. And now I wake up and I answer 10 emails before I put my feet on the floor, right? It's all there. But that was what was, the cadence of that was metered by the FedEx truck. And then the digital revolution came, and I watched it happen like right under my feet. And I didn't do anything about it. You know, I mean, of course I was involved in it, and I was developing products that used it, but, you know, Google happened, you know, Apple, all this stuff happened, and it all happened sort of like, it just happened, you know what I mean? It was like watching a movie. But I never really thought about where it was going or what was happening. So I'm, again, a sample of one, right? So triangulating everything, but there's a new revolution coming in the material side. I think, personally, that it's going to be as profound and transformative as the internet age, only in materials. So, if you read my bio, I'm pretty invested in the largest graphene lab in Manchester, England. And it mostly loses money. But it's really super cool. And what the potential is sensational, because we just did a deal with carbon fiber production in Saudi Arabia. Because carbon fiber, which is already pretty incredible, can be made 225% stronger with graphene and 184% better in tensile strength. So basically, it's amazing. So to give you a sense of that, like if you add graphene to steel, and one of the chief scientists is a Nobel laureate who came up with this stuff, and he's our chief scientist. He was with the guys who discovered graphene. I'm assuming you know what graphene is. I should probably go back and be like, what is graphene? Graphene is the same graphite that you have in your pencil. I'm going to think of it metaphorically. If you drag your pencil across a piece of paper, okay, I want you to think about it like shedding Post-it notes, right? It's shedding graphene and making that graphite line. You with me? Cool. Then graphene would be the same graphite material, but one atom thick. It can't really be any thinner. I guess it could be, but that would be a big boom, and we don't want that. 1 atom thick of graphite is graphene. And what's amazing about this material is that it has tremendous properties for thermal conductance, for transmissive power, like for energy. We did a big project with the European Space Agency and Skidmore Powell to create the European Space Agency, because in space, any piece of something the size of a popcorn kernel would take out a satellite or an aircraft or like a space station, because it's traveling so fast, right? And it's like a bullet. So a graphene composite shell can deflect that and take that impact in ways that no other material can. Thermoconductively, it could be facing the sun on one side, which is, you know, stupid hot and stupid cold on the opposite side. The smart guys can tell you those numbers. I can't remember them because that's me. But It's amazing. So graphene is this amazing material, and to give you a sense of its strength, if you add it to steel, I mean, if you were to hug a cable on the Golden Gate Bridge, I don't think you can get your arms around it barely. If you made that same steel with graphene, it could be about the thickness of a pencil. So that gives you a bit of a ratio, right? Like imagine if you've seen those giant braided cables of stainless steel, and those bridges could be just like pencil thin and have the same material strength. It's expensive to make, and what I would say is YouTube it, look at the publishing date, because in this world, if it's 5 years ago, it's moved along, but it's happening. And kind of like the internet age, it's happening right now. So I think what you're going to see is it's going to be corner case first. When I say corner case, think of a square, right? There's the big targets in the middle, and if you hear this phrase, imagine a circle inside of a square. Most people are inside the circle. There's a few things in the corners, right, like aerospace and other things that are not so common that are using it already. But I'm just doing tons of patents in graphene. Everything from like imagine like graphene tiles, right? That you can set like you tile a floor, but they're conductive, and the last tile is near your plug, and you plug it in, you have a heated floor. Right? That's what graphene could do. Imagine that a material that can change color on demand. So if you have, you know, signage, clothing, it can change color. It has incredible conductive properties for like computing, right? So in computers right now, they're using graphene things to cool supercomputers. They're using some graphene materials because of the thermal conductive qualities and so forth. So graphene is a pretty amazing material. It's definitely something you want to know about. Put it on your radar. Geek out onto YouTube, because I know in the world of like Sora and all the other stuff that's coming across your transom that's so transformative in our world, it'd be an easy one to miss. But I think it's going to be one that you will live to see transformative stuff. As an example, we're doing some work in Dubai. We're doing the Neom City. You guys know about Neom? Maybe that's something you got to check out. It's a city of the future in Dubai, and it's huge, and it's an environmental city, superstructure city. But we're hopefully going to have we're going to do the concrete for that. So the concrete with concrete added. Okay, so there's two things. There's concrete that you can make, which is regular concrete, and you add graphene to it, and it becomes amazing concrete, and you don't need rebar. So all that steel goes away. What we're working on currently is to take graphene and make concrete without any cement, or any of the stuff that's carbon emitting. So we can make a green concrete using bio waste from oil production. To make a polymer that kind of behaves like concrete and works and costs like concrete, but doesn't require any rebar and is environmentally. Concrete produces more CO2 than automobiles. It's an untold story, but check that out. That's a fact. Concrete is a really big polluter. And but the biggest thing, and this is like the really impactful, really interesting thing about graphene, and we already proved this out, and we actually have product. We took graphene and added it to recycled rubber. I'll share with you guys a little bucket list item that I want to do. In Mexicali, Mexico, there's Mount Everest of tires. It's just like this giant tire mountain, collecting water, breeding mosquitoes, hurting the habitat, and of course, like, what are you going to do? In some places like India, they burn these tires for energy, because the caloric intake of a tire, energy calories, really high. But obviously not so clean or smart to be burning tires, and we know that's not good. So what do? You either burn them or bury them, right? Well, what we can do is take that recycled rubber, and now here's the punchline. It's important not to miss this. The recycled stuff is 5% stronger and better than the virgin stuff. That's transformative, because imagine like there's always some material degradation, right, in whenever you recycle stuff. So imagine you've got a bunch of ABS plastic from making whatever you're making, okay? You guys know this stuff, I hope. Like when you make a part, anything really, there's a sprue on it, right? So there's like going to be some scrap. It doesn't matter. Just like there's little legs that they got to snip off, and eventually there's a pile of those things. And then there's also defect parts. So those parts get put into a regrinder, and they get chewed up into granulars. But those things have already been cycled, right? So they're less effective than virgin plastic, so they can only add a little bit to it. So it's called regrind. You guys know this stuff? Yeah? You cool? Okay, cool. So I don't want to stop me if I get too dorky. Just be like, dude, what are you talking Anyway, you can take this plastic that's reground, shred it up, but you only add a little bit to it, you know? So Nike is super happy about having 15%, you know, reground in their Nike shoe, whatever it is. They branded it really cool. I can't remember the name of it though. But anyway, 15%, right? And it looks like vomit. Not so bad if it's on the bottom of the shoe, who cares? It looks cool. But I wouldn't want dinnerware with it, right? Or certain things. But we can take plastic and rehydrate it with graphene and turn it to be something as good or better than virgin plastic. And now we just change the whole thing. Because mentally, or sort of where our heads are set is like, recycled things are not as good as virgin stuff, right? Like, not as good normally, but add graphene and it changes everything. So now you can get, you know, that's a big, big environmental mover. And there's actually not even a name for this yet. So if you have one, like how to make something like better that it's recycled, it's like the more, like it gets better, not worse. And that's huge. Because now you can have a lot of regrinding of part, which means your material optimization, how much a product can be recycled without degradation of, you know, quality, whether it's impact or stress or whatever. You know, this is where graphene has a future. So the challenges now are that, you know, when I was a kid, my dad had this digital watch and he gave it to me, and I remember it was $100. It seemed like a lot of money back then, but all it did was tell the time, and you would just push the button, these little LED lights would like light up, and I loved it. You know, I thought it was so cool. It's a space age. You know, and I remember this watch was really expensive, but like, you know, in no time it became like something you didn't think about. It's like free. You know, it's like nobody thinks about like what a digital anything costs. Just, you know, so I think in a similar way, like there's a lot of people, a lot of smart people figuring out how to monetize this technology and get it into the masses. Kind of like the early days of computing or any other types of digital technology. You know, it's going to go from where it is now, kind of evolutionary cycle. It's kind of like the early days of computers, right? When everything was big and clunky and not quite there. But it's happening at sort of the same rate where 15 years from now, you know, you're not going to recognize what you can build. You know, and you're going to see things that look almost impossible to construct. But the math is there. And like, for example, here's a thing, and this is like a real influence, this is a real data. So we looked at like hydrogen tanks, and we built one. And a normal hydrogen tank can be pressurized about 700 pounds respectfully. It can go up to 800 pounds, but you know, it looks like a big scuba tank. Okay, that's a hydrogen tank. For like for a fuel cell, for a bus or whatever. The same thing wrapped with a carbon fiber container impregnated with graphene, we can go up to, you know, easily over 1,200 pounds of pressure. So we're getting a 40% increase there. And a 40% increase, and the stuff we're looking at is like, there's not one around here, but if there was like one of those big red fire extinguishers hanging on the wall, right, we could fit the same volume and pressure in something you could fit in your glove box, right? So like everything changes with this material breakthrough. And it'll happen, again, in those corner cases first, where people can afford to do it. Kind of like the early days of anything, early adopters who can afford it. It's going to be, you know, not pervasive yet, but it is coming. And something to be aware of. Yeah. Was that a question? No, sorry. Cool. All right. That's graphene. How are we tracking on time? Got some time? Cool. All right. What's next? Yes?
Do your own stunts.
Do your own thing. Is that one?
Yeah.
Oh, do your own stunts.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So I talked about like, you know, risking stuff and all that. Well, here's the thing. You know, there's a comedian that I love, and he tragically died early. I think he overdosed, but he was really funny. His name's Mitch Hedberg, and if you need to escape out of your head, check him out. He's hilarious. But you know, he became a really successful comedian, and as soon as he did, they're like, well, can you act? And he's like, no, man, I'm a comedian, right? And the thing is, like, that was his craft. But the thing is, once you get really good at doing this, everyone's going to want you to do something else. You know what I mean? Like manage people. You know what I mean? And that's cool, and you could take that on, but the gravity of life is going to pull you away from doing your own stunts. You know what I mean? Like, stuff's going to change. You're going to be like, it's been months since I had used a 3-button mouse. I really, and here's the thing, and I got to tell you, man, there are seasons in life, and there's going to be times that you're going to want to reach into your bag of tricks and have something there. And if you get into a situation where all you can do is talk about design or manage design or lead other people, to me it's like, if you don't do your own stunts, meaning like you can do it, you can drive it. Like, I never got separated from my skills. A lot of my peers did. And a lot of those peers that I have are finding a lot of difficulty sort of in my phase of life, where you become sort of like, well, what do I do? What's my value, in terms of what can I really contribute? Leadership's important, but, if you're some fancy hot dog of a leader, there might not be anything there for you, right? Or it might take you a year to find. The more rarefied you get in your space, the better you become. It's like you're that person who could do that really well, and maybe you do that really well for a company, and let's just say, something happens, and that stuff happens, it's like, wow, who would have thought that Lenovo would have bought Motorola, or that, things happen that you're displaced, it happens. And being able to do your own stunts is swivel into doing something else, like not giving up what you know, but having some actual value. The world will try to make you feel important in ways that might satisfy your ego, but man, that illusion comes crashing down when the job that you love and the people you manage goes away suddenly for whatever reason. Like, hey, thanks for training up all the people in Hong Kong and Asia, and you know what? We're going to dismantle the group here in the U.S. and kind of go over there. So if you want to maybe go to Hong Kong to live or whatever, and tempting as that is, it's like, I couldn't pack it. You've got to have a wife and a horse and dogs and stuff, and like, there's no way I can make that happen. So like, okay, well then I guess this is goodbye then. And you're going, wow, like last week I was like strutting, like, walking down the halls, and I was like a dude, I felt good doing what I was doing, but when all that came away, it's like, wow, now what do I do, right? I could swivel into Rhino, I could swivel into Alias, I could build my own decks, I could do my own stunts. And I think that's really important, because it's not important where you are now, point in time. So I'm kind of, I'm trying to give you a little bit of wisdom for the future too. Like, and that's part of that 20%. And I think it kind of loops around. For me, the Burning Man thing kind of always gave me a reason. You know what I mean? I'm like, as it happens, it's like, man, I gotta like come up with something really cool, like a really cool build for this year. And I guess to build that, I need to 3D print it, and I need to like do this, and I'm gonna need a laser cutter, and then, you know what I mean? It's like, my friends are buying 911s, and I'm buying like, Helix laser engravers and CNC stuff. You know what I mean? Like that's, but you know what, man? That's like, it's super cool, and I really personally enjoyed that. And when the poop hit the fan, I could get behind that stuff and turn that into revenue. And some of the other people that I worked with who were really good at talking or leading, and and I'm not saying there's not tremendous value in there. Of course there is. You need good leaders. You need good people who can sell and seduce and all. But if you don't do your own stunts, it's really hard for you to even know what you're even asking for. And I always, as a leader of people, and I've led big teams in different parts of the world through various career phases, like knowing what it takes to get things done also gave me the empathy I needed to actually know what I was asking for. And I would laugh when somebody would say, can you guys get that done by the end of the week? And you're like, that's just humanly impossible, right? And there's no way this even begin to get that done. But I could defend my team because I know what it takes to do it. You know what I mean? I've done it. I'm living it. And I'm not that far away from the process. When I became into corporate, and there may be a thing I didn't share, did we talk about corporate life? I don't think we did. But anyway, corporate life thing is like, kind of like the Mitch Hedberg thing, like, the comedian. It's like, well, can you act? He's like, I don't want to be an actor. I want to be a comedian. I got, the better I was at my craft, the more people wanted me to do less of it. like lead people and do this and, spread your wisdom across whatever, spread spectrum of individuals or whatever. But what I found is that the metaphor I could use or will use is that if you've ever seen these movies, and it's pretty common, where someone's in jail, and they're like touching each other through the glass, it's like there. That's what it felt like for me. It's like all my friends are on the other side of the glass. Like I don't want to really be here. I want to be over there. I want the intimacy of the process. I want to smell stuff. I want to grind on a model every once in a while. You know what I mean? I want to shape the stuff. I want to feel it. I want to be part of it. I want to be with my peeps doing the work, and it was really a big, like what I do now, I haven't done for a long time, honestly, because I lead teams, a legion of teams that do stuff. I mean, there might be 50 products in the pipeline at a big company, and you kind of have to oversee it, overlord it, make sure everything's going well, but you're never really doing the stunts. You know what I mean? Like, you're not suiting up and scaring the crap out of yourself to, like, hit that ramp and, like, clear it. You know what I mean? Like, or do that, whatever it is. It's like, it feels like that when you're taking risks and you're doing things or you're making stuff work and you're trying to fulfill a vision that you have and you're trying to move it through the organization and build consensus and, when they tell you it's too expensive and you got to know how to take cost out of it and not compromise it. Like, there's a visceral thing there that's really fun. It's like, that's where it's at for me. And I get to do that every day now, and I couldn't be happier. I don't have 40 people, 50 people to lead. I don't really have anyone that directly reports to me. I'm kind of a free-range designer for the things I'm doing now. And as much as I really adored the teams and the people I've led, and they were all dear friends now, it's so cool to be connected and see people grow and build their careers. But I'd much rather be in the stew than like stir in the pot kind of thing. You know what I mean? And that's me, and that's not for everybody, but the advice I would give is, I know I'm not a huge Tom Cruise fan, but he's like a motorcycle nut, and so am I. So I like respect that I know he's really riding it. Not through, I mean, obviously they're not going to, he's not going to risk his life to a level that's going to, but I respect that, he's not faking it. You know what I mean? Like, he might not have to go down the stairs and risk his life on a motorcycle or whatever the stunt calls for, but he knows how to shift it, and he knows how to get on it, and he knows what it feels like to do it. And I think when he gets off and he hands the motorcycle to somebody else to finish it out, he's got a really, he's close to the source of what's going down, right? He's not helicoptering around kind of just overseeing it with his mimosa and his, his headset, right? He's on the ground where it's happening. And I think again, I underscore that I'm a source of one, right? So this is what's worked for me, but I never got away from doing my own stunts. And I think that for me, it gives me empathy for the people who did them for me. Like, I can understand it and appreciate it at a deeper level. I know what I'm asking for. But I can also fall back on it. It's like, heaven forbid I had to go back to making a living doing whatever. I know I could do that. And that's a peace of mind that no one can take from me. And there are seasons of your life and your career that are going to call for those things. And you're going to be looking for what's in your arsenal, what's in the tool shed that you can pull out and use. And the older you get in your career and the more and more you kind of drift through it, it's easy to shed those things until you're basically empty. And then all of your equity resides in what badge or business card you're carrying around in your wallet or purse or whatever digital card you have, right? It's called, your value is determined by other people if you don't do your own stunts. But if you do your own stunts, you always have the equity and the security that you need to say, I don't agree with this company ethically. Much as I love being here, nothing. And that's a complete opposite. Not the company I'm with now. I love and adore, and it's so great. But you know what? There's been times when, much as I love these guys, I don't like the way they run in the business. It's not cool. You know what I mean? I can't get behind this. I gotta move on. But I'm what will that mean for me if I decide I can't go forward with this group of people that I saddled up with? I did that with a consultancy. We were last time I was here, I was working for a different consultancy. We just didn't see eye to eye. It was not confrontational, but I just didn't agree with the way they were doing things. And it's or another situation, right? Or somebody says, I'm not going to get into politics, but someone says, hey, you got to get vaccinated or you're fired, right? And then you're like, well, now what do I do, right? If I got it, you don't have the choice if you don't have a choice. But if you do your own stunts and you have your own equity and you have your own value, then it's hard for other people to take that away, and it makes you less beholden or less obligated to bend to the will of other people when you don't agree. And to have free will, you gotta be free range. And to be free range, you gotta do your own stunts. No one do that. Make sense?
Yeah.
Cool, cool.
Thank you.
Right on. All right.
There's what, one?
Is there one left?
Explorers, you might have already talked about China.
I did a little bit. Oh no, I didn't talk about China and ODMs. You want to hit that one? Or
It's either that or
there's Explorers. I can tell you about Explorers. I think that's, I'll try to hit them both. I talked a lot about China and ODMs. The thing about that, how are we doing on time here? Guys, just a little bit of time. Right? What do we have?
We got up to an hour.
Up to an hour. All right, well, we can keep this going as long as you want to.
That's the maximum. We
Yeah.
can go an hour.
Cool, cool. Okay, so then I don't have to rush through it. If you guys are digging this, I can just kind of go at my own pace and we can even keep going. Let's start with China and ODMs. Since we're not in a hurry, I got to share with you. It's like a real story. It's so cool, so neat. You know, I got to Kyocera, which is a Japanese company. It sounds Korean, but it's actually Japanese. And I left BlackBerry to go there. And when they offered me the job, and they said, "Hey, we want to, we have a history of being first in leadership in all these areas." And they said, "We want you to lead the future for us and do all this cool stuff." And when I was making the move from Toronto to San Diego to do that, cool key shot, trackpad back there. Anyway, I was making the move from Toronto to San Diego, super excited to experience California for the first time as a resident. And they called me and they said, "Yeah, we changed our mind. We're going to be the value leader instead. Like this whole idea, like the whole plan of doing the future changed." And they said, "We're going to change our business plan. We want to be the low-cost leader." And that kind of changed everything. And what that meant was the team that I was promised and the design facility I was promised to build out went poof, was gone. They were like, the whole plan changed from going like, we're going to beat Motorola to, we want to be like the Cricket and prepaid, and like, dude, that's not what, like, I wouldn't have left BlackBerry to do that, right? That doesn't sound like a good job, at least at the time when you're doing neat stuff. It's sort of like going down the value chain. But they pulled that on me when I was in transit. And nothing I could do about it. So when I got to the team, when I got to the existing team, I couldn't hire anything, and they said, basically what we're going to do is we're not going to grow the design team, we're going to do it all offshore. Now at this point in time, this was about 2008 time frame, so remember back in the mid-90s, I was going to China and seeing this whole transformation happen offshore. But by the time now this is around 2008, China had since become like, remember the thinking and doing, now they're thinking and doing, and China's on fire. They're like killing it. They're doing really cool stuff, and things are like completely transformed. Like, at the beginning, like in the early 90s, like stuff that came from China was not considered to be very good. It was considered to be like the good stuff came from Japan, right? Like Japan was like, quality, like Canon and Sony, like they were the leaders of quality, but that the complete shift now, like now the good stuff's coming from China and everything, and like they had matured so quickly as a powerhouse of manufacturing and engineering. And what used to be like, hey, we got to dispatch our best and brightest to go help them, now we were learning from China, like wow, China's like polarity shift, like they're in total mastery of the tools and the technologies, and they have the latest stuff. And it went from like kind of like shabby factories to stuff that looked like NASA. It was a complete transformation in cities too. They went from like Allentown, Pennsylvania to like Blade Runner in like 10 years. So, but what happened was there became a lot of competition in China for ODMs. ODMs is basically outsourced design manufacturing. It's a common phrase if you haven't heard it. It might be called CM, contract manufacturers. So this is your Foxcons, your Wistrons, your Quantas, like these big megas, like they're almost like cities. Like a Foxconn might have 70,000 people that live on campus, all in the dormitories, and they all work there, and they make stuff there. You know, they produce stuff, assemble stuff, mold stuff, do all that stuff. But what happened was there became a lot of competition for contracts. So as a way to seduce manufacturers, like whether you're at Kyocera or Dell or HP or what have you, they start offering design services for free. It's kind of like, hey, we'll do all your design work over here, right, at Foxconn. And we'll give you a bunch of designs, and you don't have to carry the burden of a design house in the US, right? So it's like, wow, you know, I got 12 people in the bullpen here doing this stuff, but now I got like 30 people in China doing it all for free, right? And I got a handful of people that I'm leading here, and I'm the leader of the team, so I know what it costs. Like a fully burdened employee is expensive by the time there's like what you make, okay? And there's a thing called fully burdened employee, and this is what employers look at. So let's just say you want to make $100,000 a year to keep it simple. You know, the employer is probably paying $130,000 or more to get that employee because they have to do all this other benefits and stuff. So your cost is cost plus to every individual, is cost plus to a company. So it's very attractive for the company to say, hey, instead of hiring more designers, why don't we just like go get the stuff from China, right? We can get it for free. And it's kind of like the drug dealer model in a way. It's kind of like if you your first one's for free, but then after that they get you hooked on like, you know, on their design services. And then if you're doing design with them, you're going to build with them because they own design. It's called vendor lock-in. So it's a seductive way to get somebody in your nest. It's like a spider trap, right? They're like, hey, we'll design cool stuff for you, and then we'll build it for you. So it's a way to collect and secure contracts. But as a manager of design, I had a really challenging because, you know, and what worked for me and the way I was able to retain my design team was by making it very obvious that my internal design team had a better contextual understanding of what trends and styles and things would work in the regions here in North America that we were serving. Kind of like that cell phone I told you about that would be designed to look like a burial casket, right? It was unbecoming, right? We could hold our position barely by saying there's a need for us to understand regional tastes and likes and desires of the public we were serving in design. But it didn't stop us from going and getting a lot of free design offshore. And a cool story that I want to share with you, and this is a tremendous, she would be a great speaker. I'm going to introduce you guys. So I would go in these meetings rooms in Duncan, China, and I kept on seeing what was like a lot of bad work. I mean, it was just not good. They were rewarded on volume. It makes sense, right? Like in a manufacturing culture, it's throughput that matters, right? So if you design one keypad, it became like the Chinese menu. They would like use the same keypad and just arrange parts and without much thought about the holistic experience of the product. So at first, like I would just go and like, oh, it's terrible, 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 terrible. And then, but every once in a while, I'd be like, that's pretty good, right? That one goes here, right? Bad, 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 bad. Swipe. I don't know. When you got swipe left, I don't know. I'm just like, I didn't live through that. But anyway, swipe, whatever it is, swipe. So you know, I kept on being like, this is a good one. This is good. And then I noticed that they all had the same moniker on the bottom. I said, oh. I said, this is pretty cool. I said, this person, I said, I want to meet this guy. And shamefully, I thought it was a dude. And he goes, oh, no, you can't meet this person. And I'm like, I'm the customer, and I want to meet this person for encouragement. And so he brought in this, at the time, very shy woman, obviously Chinese woman, who was doing this design work. And her English was like decent. Like she knew English pretty decently. And I asked, I said, hey, I just want to commend you on this work. I said, it's the only work I really hear that I have any value in. And I said, how can I help you? Like, what is it you want? How can I help you grow? Or how can I how can we keep doing more of this? And now remember, I'm in Duncan, China, right? So I'm in an ODM, like, over there. And the residents there are living in a dormitory. It's not the best life scenario. I don't care how bad or dysfunctional your upbringing was, you popped up in an amazing part of the world and you're having this experience. You're incredibly gifted and lucky to be here. I am as well, to be sharing this with you. But what was really neat about it is she goes, I want to go to design school in America. And I'm thinking to myself, what's the chances of that happening, really? Like, come on. Like, for here in a factory in China, and you were living in a dormitory at a factory and not probably making much money, like, it's not a good life condition, I'm being honest. But you know what she did? So I thought, is there really any sense in me kind of unpacking this for her? But I did, and I said, hey, here's a list of design schools, here's what I would do, here's what, here's what you could possibly, if you're going to do it, here's a couple ideas, right, of where you should go and do. So after that experience we had, I left the company shortly after, and I never saw her again. And years later, I'm looking for someone to take a junior position, but an important one, and I call this friend of mine who's a chair at Carnegie Mellon University. I said, hey, his name's Craig Vogel, and I'm like, hey, Craig, can you hook me up with somebody? I'm looking for somebody really good, and I kind of give him the description and so forth. He says, hey, I think I got some in mind. He goes, I said, do you care if she's female? I'm like, of course not. That's great. Do you care if she's Chinese? No, I got a lot of, speak Mandarin? That'd be brilliant. He goes, yeah. And he introduces it to me, and it's that girl. Hand to God, that happened. And she wrote, this is somebody who is incredibly disadvantaged in her life scenario. She translated the PTC Pro Engineer manual. Does anyone know Pro Engineer? Okay, this is super deep, dark in the nerd forest, man. This is like what engineers use mostly. But she saw a need that engineers in China needed, like they had the manuals in Chinese. She translated the first PTC manual, which is like, thick, right? It's like a freaking huge, monumental task. And she did that and earned her way into school in America. And now she lives in Carlsbad. She works for Thermo Fisher. She's got a great husband and a pool and beautiful children. And it's like she made that happen. So you guys are going to feel headwinds and everything, but you're already starting off on third base, relative, right? So you can round it. You can do it. It's going to be hard. You're going to have a lot of headwinds, but man, I've seen it happen. It's like crazy. So don't give up or feel disparaged or whatever, because it'll be really easy to roll over and play dead sometimes and be like, oh, it's just not happening for me, whatever. But you've got to dig, man. It's like you got to dig deep and like not give up. And she made that happen. It's so cool to have her seen that, make that experience happen for herself. And it's so fun to reconnect, and we're dear friends. Her name's Fran. And maybe she'll be here sometime. I'll connect you guys. But her story is amazing. All right. So free stuff coming, but the challenge is that a lot of these ODMs, and let's call them manufacturers in China, will offer free design services to corporations to get their business. But on the other hand, many of these companies, and now what's happening, and when I had my consultancy, many of the companies are no longer wanting to do that because they've seen how that dependency, the pendulum swings the other way. If you're beholden to a manufacturer in China, you can't lift and shift your thing anywhere else. So let's just say you're making, I don't know, blenders or toasters or whatever it is you're making, and the group over in Asia built that product, they designed that product for you, and they're making it for you. You can't say, I don't really like your terms, and you've been increasing the price 10% every quarter. You know what, it'd be a lot cheaper if we went elsewhere. Well, you can't, because they got you, right? They got you in vendor lock-in. So companies now are getting wise to that, and they're saying, I don't really want to do that anymore. I want to bring it in-house. So, but it still is a force of nature you need to be aware of, because if you go to bid a project and you don't get it, that could be the reason. It could be like, you're competing now, not with other designers, but you're competing with designers and manufacturers. Swinging back to the consulting side, though, for just a moment, for as terrifying and amazing that AI is and all that stuff, The difference now is that you can be a consultant with your laptop and relatively minimal viable equipment. And when I got into this profession, you had to go corporate because they were the only ones who could underwrite all the equipment that it took, you know. It was super expensive to have a CAD station. It was like, you know, tens of thousands of dollars. Startup cost, how to run your own agency was incredible. So, you know, if you do get into consulting, you can keep a pretty low cost, you know, you can keep your costs down by providing design services that could be attractive and also competitive to some of the largest manufacturers, and offer them the chance that if they use you, right, they're not beholden to vendor lock-in. And that's an attractive selling point for some vendors. So if you are bidding on a job, make sure you can bring that up and say, look, you know, at the close of this thing, you own all the IP, you own all the, you know, all the data, you know, you have no vendor lock-in, and that is something that would be attractive. They'll never tell you they want that, but it would be something that you can sell on if you're doing a consulting side. Coming to America or Explorers? Let's do Explorers. Sound good? Cool. You guys digging this so far? Okay. Yeah? Is it helpful? Cool. Like if I get too worried or whatever, you know, this is interesting to me because I lived it. I don't know if it's interesting to anybody else. Whatever. But anyway, you're stuck. You're here. So Explorers is a kind of different topic. You know, there's a company out there, and I would really check them out. I haven't done so in a while, truth be told, but it's called Cheskin Research, with a C, Cheskin Research. And they tend to have some really interesting data stuff. And I was working with Cheskin on a project, and we were trying to understand how to make cell phones attractive to basically a younger generation. And as a data point, like before you guys were born into a connected world, but you know, early days, like cell phones are something like doctors and lawyers had, and other people, and government people. They were expensive, and as the prices cascade, they became in the hands of more and more people. So then the market started to be like, how, you know, what does a 14-year-old want in a cell phone? So we started to unpack what that's about and how to understand that market. And you know, we unpacked something pretty interesting, and it's kind of relevant to, kind of applies across different product sectors. But let's just talk about kids first now. This is called these high school kids. And think of this as kind of a fractal or a template, kind of like a leaf. Those vines in a leaf are sort of like the structure of the tree. That's a fractal. You know, it's like it applies in other places. And the thing about that is, if you look at the teenagers, there's a couple different sectors or markets within, say, high school. All right? So there's going to be what's called the visibles. And visibles are anyone who's just blessed with attractive looks, or maybe they play a varsity sport, or maybe their parents are really like liberal and let them have wild parties, or like the people you go to the house that always has the great parties, or somebody's got like, you know, there's something that makes them visible, right? There's something very attractive. They're a small group, pretty small group, and they're all the people who, you know, they're all every plot line about like high school usually involves like the jerk who's the letter guy and the, you know, that drives the Camaro or whatever, right? That's the visibles. You get me? Mean Girls or whatever. I'm not sure I've seen that, but I think Mean Girls might have been visibles. But everyone wants to be them. Everyone wants to be visible, and think of that as a really small bubble. And then the large bubble, where most people reside, is called the status quos. And that's pretty much everybody. So you got a lot of people, right, biting to be visible, dying to be visible, you know? It's like everybody is wanting a position in the visible space, but most of us reside in the status quo segment. And what's interesting about what we discovered in this research process is that the visibles are kind of lucked into it in some respects. They're not kind of self-made. But there's this really much smaller bubble called the explorers. And they're kind of a bit, there's another even smaller group called like the Outcasts, and that's kind of like people who are like super goth or super punk or whatever. Like they're they're really not in terms of a market, and I don't mean to be insincere on feeling about a segment, but no market really tries, few markets really try to go to the non-teens or whatever. There's also another group called non-teens, actually. There's another one. These are really small bubbles. Non-teens are like people who are wise beyond their years. Everyone knows, like, dude, you're like 40 years old in high school, really? Like there's that person. Maybe you're one of those. I did. Anyway, but this other smaller group that matters, the one we care about, is called the explorers. And an explorer will be somebody who, they might like let's just say like everybody's wearing boot-cut denim at the time. And then they decide they're going to wear their sister's straight-leg jeans to school. And they don't care because they're explorers. They're trying new stuff, right? They're doing things that nobody else is doing. And they don't really care too much about the consequence necessarily. They're not afraid to explore and express. But what happens is, if one of those explorer trends gets adopted by a visible, okay? Like let's just say you got some person, and just for stereotypical purposes, I don't mean to be biased in any way, please, we get that. Let's just say you've got somebody who plays varsity football, and they decide they're not gonna play football this year. They'd really much rather. Let's just say there's this, like I was a snowboarder when snowboarding wasn't legal at ski parks. Okay, it was definitely explorer sport. But if a varsity football player takes up snowboarding, right, it catches fire. So that intersection between explorers and visibles, that transmissive thing, there's going to be a lot. Here's a great example. Does anybody remember a guy named Jesse James who made motorcycle stuff? You guys know what I'm talking about? You do, of course. The rest of you, wow, it's crazy. He was like People's Guy of the Year. Anyway, there was this guy named Jesse James, and you don't need to research him really, but I'll tell you the story. He was this guy somewhere in Los Angeles who was making custom motorcycles. So Shaquille O'Neal, you know who he is? Okay, cool. I do too, but I'm not a sports guy. But anyway, he's a famous basketball player. He's super big, I'll tell you, like a massive dude, giant. So he went into a motorcycle shop, and they were like, hey, we really don't have anything that fits you, because I think the guy's like 7+ feet tall. So nothing, you look stupid on your motorcycle. And he's like, well, I really want a bike. And they're like, well, there's this guy in Los Angeles who could build you one, right? So he, of course, Shaquille O'Neal, highly visible, right? Surrounded by paparazzis, whatever. So he ends up going to Los Angeles and finding this guy, Jesse James, to build him this custom motorcycle. And that's what Jesse did. And then Shaquille O'Neal showed up in Miami South Beach, another visible spot, on his East Coast chopper, motorcycle. And suddenly, choppers became mainstream. Nobody rode choppers, nobody cared. The trend died. But here's the thing, like after a while, like that, so Jesse James built a motorcycle, he gets a visible to buy it, the visible gets photographed, and now everybody wants to be like him, like Shaquille O'Neal, and they all start trying to find Jesse James to build them a motorcycle. So this guy who was in an industrial park somewhere, relatively unknown, certainly unknown compared to not even known in the motorcycle community really, became like People's Guy of the Year, like within People's Man of the Year when that mattered. Anyway, married Sandra Bullock, became huge career. But the minute his stuff, the West Coast Chopper stuff, I think it was West Coast Chopper, is the name of his business. The minute that stuff started becoming on pajamas that you could buy at Sears for baby sizes, right? Now he's a status quo brand. Died. Really, it's like the birth and death of that brand was he could not hold a visible space. And that's why the exclusivity of certain brands, like high-end brands and luxury brands, have to remain in a visible spot. They can't really ever take their brand down market too much. If they ever fall into a status quo place, I think Coach didn't do it, but Liz Claiborne did for sure. As a brand, fashion brand, right? They were sort of, these fashion brands that try to go mainstream, sometimes it's like they become a status quo brand and then they really lose their brand equity. And that's always a difficult challenge for a business, because once a brand or a product catches fire, everyone's going to want you to maximize it, just pump it for as much as you can get out of it, right? To build that brand. But almost pulling back, like Apple is probably selling product with tremendous margins. Like I can go buy an Acer for, not that I would. No offense, AJ. I just battled you too long. They're actually pretty good for what you get, but they're cheap. Like if you want a computer, you can go buy an Acer for $800, or you can go buy a MacBook for a couple $1,000. And trust me, the delta cost is not there, right? So as much as people have talked through the ages of what Apple has done smartly, much of what Apple has done is not to do too much, right? The difference, when I ran design for Dell, and Dell wanted to have an exclusive brand kind of at the Apple level. So they have this brand called XPS, and it's good hardware. This is my Alienware, actually, the last product I worked on with my team when I was leading that team. They do nice stuff, but the thing is, Dell could not command the margins that Apple had, and part of that is because you can go into a store and buy a blister pack mouse, with the pad that they sourced from China somewhere and pad printed a Dell logo on it for $12, right? You can't do that with an Apple product. Good luck. I mean, it's going to be a knockoff. If you're lucky, you'll find it, right? Or people will knock it off. But, they are smart about what they don't do, and they have made sure that they don't become a status quo brand, as much as it's tempting to do that. So I think part of their brand management and part of their smartness is by managing their portfolio of products and design smartly to make sure they don't slide into a status quo space. And that's how they're maintaining their margins and maintaining their brand exclusive. Now, they've slid a bit in terms of their brand appeal as generational changes happen. It's sort of like, there's also, and this is why The Fourth Turning is a really good book that I highly recommend about understanding generational cycles and the impact it has on design. Where are you point in time? And that helps you understand who you're designing for. So to maintain relevance over time, or to maintain your product position over time, you want to make sure it's sometimes a battle, because when you do something successful, everyone's going to say, man, if we take it to Walmart, it'll be like crazy. We'll get 3x the whatever. But once you're on a Walmart shop, there's no moonwalking backward from that. You're in Walmart or Target or whatever, and then you're perceived differently than if you're in a boutique store, right? You're not as special. There's a trend analyst. I don't know if she's still doing this stuff, but her name was Robin Waters. She had this thing called. She told me, like, there's an absence of scarcity in the world, which is kind of interesting. It's like you go and name anything, paper towels or cars or whatever. There's dozens of choices. There's an absence of scarcity in the world, and if you're designing things, like, there's value in the scarce, to not just have everything be so commoditized. And I think there's a specialness in that people value, and it's easy to give away when you want to just pump volume or pump profit. All right. Yes.
What is the book that you just mentioned?
Oh, hold on. Come to you.
No, it's okay. I'll speak louder.
No, it's cool. I don't mind walking around school.
What is the book that you just mentioned? What is the book that you just mentioned?
The product?
No, the book.
Oh, the book. The Fourth Turning. Yeah. I think it's Howland Strauss. The Fourth Turning talks about, like, here's an example of what you'll encounter in the book. My generation had tremendous free range growing up. I'm a Gen Xer. It's 1968, right? So I had done stuff and experienced things. By the time I was 18, I probably should have died at least a dozen times. It was like parents would just let you roam the planet, right? There was no cell phones. It was gnarly. It was crazy what we did as kids. But when I don't have any children, we have dogs and horses and such, but no kids. But my generation, when they did have kids, knowing this, overprotected, overmanaged, overscheduled, because it's like, man, I would not mind my kids doing what I did when I was that age. You know what I mean? So they over-indexed. So what happened, it not only affected what parents did, it also shaped policy, right? Like, we never had bike helmets, like nobody wore a bike helmet, ever. We jumped bikes over ramps and did gnarly stuff that, it's like you could see those old photos and stuff. But the thing about our free agency is having that my generation when they had that free agency recognized the danger in that. And probably the irresponsible parenting nature of that in many respects. And they overprotected, now we overprotect, overmanage our kids, but it also shaped policy. The conversation shifted from how much debt do we have in the national debt to how much debt will our kids inherit? Like, what are we doing to the future generations? Everything became kid-centric. Chasing down deadbeat parents, putting bike helmets on kids, putting safety belts, making sure like car seats are legal, like everything became protecting kid-centric. And that has to do with the backlash or the instinctual and experiential things that happened when my generation started having kids. And it's really interesting to see and track these generational shifts, and the fourth turning unpacks this in a really cool way, much better than I could, because I'm just kind of paraphrasing what I remember, but I remember I was talking about something I was doing at SCAD, and I probably wandered, because I do that. But looping it back to this conversation I was having at SCAD, I brought this book up, and someone in the audience kind of took it to light, and they did they got back to me and they said, hey, I read that book, and I did some stuff, and I did a survey. She was a researcher. She said, I surveyed people of your generation and how far they typically traveled away from home when they were young. And it was astounding. It was like something like a 12-year-old was going up to like 14 miles away from home or something like that, like riding their bikes and doing stuff and jumping trains and doing crazy stuff we did as kids. And she said, I surveyed younger kids, and she said, it's 8 meters. It's like, but here's the thing, like they're playing Xbox with someone in Australia. It's like a completely different generational shift. Now, I don't know what that'll be, right, in terms of like the impact of a generation that grows up globally connected. I mean, I didn't have a cell phone, I had like a payphone, right? You had to like go hope that it worked and put quarters in it, and find quarters or whatever. That was like how you made a call, and now we have a globally connected youth, and that experience and immersive stuff with VR and all that stuff is going to shape the way, it'll shape everything. Policy, opinion, product, interaction, it's part of the human condition, but it's good to know what the forces of nature are, to design effectively for that. If you look at stuff and you look at trends, looking at instrument ornament again for a moment, like look at the trends in your generation. My generation like ate McDonald's and Burger King. Your generation has kind of moved up the food chain to like Chipotle and other types of healthier options, right? You probably, hopefully, you're eating and making good choices, but at least when you do make bad choices, you're more conscious of them. But like, I go back to, take my generation point in time and go back 30 years, they were advertising cigarettes as healthy. You know what I mean? Like, you can see that stuff, you can Google it, and they'll show you like, some pregnant mother smoking like whatever, cigarettes or whatever, like proudly, you know what I mean? So, it's like, it's good to know like the cultural imprint that you're designing for and the forces of nature that are driving purchase decisions, peace of mind, sensibility, and it's good to kind of understand those things. It's curious at least, and I find this stuff fascinating. I don't know if I geek out on it, but to me, I think it's like relevant to design effectively for the products you're putting out, to understand what they mean and why they're relevant. Like, why? Because it doesn't take much now to generate image or concept. It's a button push, right? It's the quality of the data and it's the depth of understanding and knowledge to know what to ask for, and also be able to think of it not from a topographical surface view, but from a holistic sort of like slice through it, walk around it, understand it, and unpack it with some understanding of knowledge. And you're going to have much more informed, meaningful decisions as you start to shape whatever it is you're shaping. Sometimes I shape policy for protecting kids. Sometimes I shape product that makes water better, you know? But there's a relevance to the things that you do as it relates to the people you're doing it for. And the generational archetypes are good to know because there's different value sets there, you know? I value my freedom so much. I don't want my car to drive me anywhere. I would love to drive, you know? And I get a lot of tickets. It's a different story, but anyway, I love it, you know? I don't want anyone to take that Bristol free. Like, you know, your generation doesn't want a car. I'm not meaning like that in any bad way. That's not so bad, right? But the future of transportation is changing profoundly. My generation, transportation was a form of status, freedom, expression, and also capability. You know, if you were somebody who could hot rod a car, and that was much more accessible to do that, that was a thing that kind of you shaped identity around that. But in my generation, if you had a tattoo, you were an ex-con or a thug, right? Or maybe a rock star. But there's no way anyone would have a sleeve tattoo like in the 80s, and like that was a serious deal. Like that was a big deal. Today you don't think twice. You know, your culture's different. Your sensibilities. Like why are people seeking this type of self-expression? What are they looking for? What is it they're seeking when they do these things? Right? I mean, it's important to know that to be able to design effectively. I think it's really important to think about those things beyond the topographical shaping or form giving of stuff. Because there's a deeper, richer meaning there that if you could connect with on a deeper level and understand it, then you'll be in the position to make the right decision and art direct and provide and create things of meaning and value better than somebody who can do it by just typing in a prompt. If that makes sense. It's like the guy who knew those headlights should be round on that Jeep was the guy that really knew his stuff, right? And that's really wasn't so much a designer as much as somebody who understood and could reflect, you know, a culture and know how to give form to things that would resonate with an audience. So I would say take in the stuff around you and look at what's happening, you know, and think about confirmation bias and who's putting it out there, what's their agenda, why are they doing this, but also like, it's hard to really know that stuff at a big level when you kind of think of it, but if you kind of drill down to human behavior doesn't change that much. You know, we're still basically primates with laptops and cell phones and connectivity, but you know, human condition has not changed very much in terms of how we've evolved as a species. We still have war. How crazy is that? How sad is that? But why? I mean, if we can solve those types of problems, if we can figure out how to create big movers in culture and life, I think then we can design a lot more than product. Right? We start to design culture. Make sense? Feel a little preachy, but I feel strongly about this stuff. I really do. And I'm not saying that I have it figured out. I really don't. I really don't. I'm as lost in the weeds most of the time as most people. But we can find our way, and I think the future of design has a lot more to do with form giving. You know, I shared this story with someone since we have a little extra time. I don't know how to hire anymore, guys. I'm just sharing this with you as a guy who's in a position to hire. You know, our company's growing, and I'm excited about where we're going. And I imagine, like, in a couple years' time, I'm going to need staff. Right? Now, I used the analogy once that I did a podcast a long time ago that I put out. I basically described how to get a design job. And I described the process as, let's just say I'm a pro baseball scout. All right, I know baseball. I know pitchers. Let's just say that's what I know. Like I know design, but let's just say for a minute I'm a baseball scout. I can really scout an athlete. And if I'm driving my truck across some farmland somewhere and I see some out of the corner of my eye, some person on a piece of farmland throw a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, I'm going to know it, right? And I'm going to pull over and be like, okay, they're a little wild, they're a little on the outside or whatever, but you know if that person can throw, you can get them into the strike zone with some grooming, right? But you know they can throw. How do I do that when everyone has a mechanical arm? Right? it's like AI is just like, I don't know how to judge a portfolio. I mean, I think how you show up and what you have to offer is really important. And I think you guys have to think that through in ways that are going to make it easy for me. Because I'm a baseball scout for talent. But I'm trained to spot who can throw, right? Sketches, renderings, models, right? The physicality. I actually came across somebody that a friend through my work basically showed me a portfolio on a screen, on a cell phone, and I was like, because I'm a baseball scout, I'm like, that dude can throw. I want to talk to him. We spent a couple great hours talking to each other. Cool dude. And I was as inspired and interested in what he had to offer because I could connect in a meaningful way with talent in ways that I can't really do it anymore. Like the channel is jammed, right? The channel used to be like really narrow bandwidth, and anyone who could tune in at the right portfolio, it's like, man, you are right in the slipstream of like, we're dialed in. I know you can do this work. I feel good about it. But I used to be able to identify it. I can't identify it like I used to. You know, it's like there's too much static in the system. There's all this stuff happening, right? And it's all happening in a way that how do you create a portfolio that is expressive of your own value and your own ability in a world that's being crowded out by a lot of simulations of good. And some, it's hard, right? Even for a baseball scout to know who has the real ability and who has a mechanical arm. So I think, I can't tell you, and I would recommend that you dial into the conference. I don't work for the IDSA anymore. I'm just passing that along. I have no skin in the game for this. I'm trying to promote their conference on their behalf or any of those things at all. But I think, I hope they address the issue because it's really difficult to identify talent. And this is something that I used to be able to do like with ease. In fact, I'll give you a little bit of a history of how I used to do it. Portfolios used to come in, and I would do the first bit, and then I would put 3 piles. I'd put, this portfolio kicks butt. This is awesome. This one looks like there's something there, like I can't really throw it out. And then, of course, there's the form letter. Thanks for playing, but, no. You don't want to be in that pile. Right? Sometimes the stuff in the middle, you think, I really couldn't throw it out because there's something there. And a deeper look into that portfolio might be like, there's depth of thought there. Like, I'm going to move them into the good pile. And sometimes I look at the good pile that just gave me an orgasm of cool stuff. Like an art center portfolio is always going to get razzed for that. And got a lot of buddies in art center. But back in the day, like they were kings of, making cool stuff. But sometimes I look at it and say, wheels don't turn, could never get it out of the mold. It's like a lot of visual masturbation. Cool, but not actionable, right? And sometimes the best portfolio that I thought was cool would go all the way to pile number 1 and say thanks for playing because there was no there beyond the depth, right? And that second tier portfolio moved into that place, right? But then I would give it to my design staff, right? Because design staffs are usually pretty tight. They're usually like a family environment. So, if you're working with other designers or kindred spirits, and you're all kind of like cut from the same cloth kind of thing. So it's been really important that I get their feedback. And universally, it didn't matter, over like 20 years of work, and this is how it goes. I'd say, hey, did you guys look at the portfolios? Like I'd give them you guys tell me who you like, and let's bring in 3 for the first round of interviews or whatever. Nobody ever in the history of this has ever said, I liked Mary's work, or John's work, or Bill's work, or whatever. They always said, I liked Helicopter Guy. And be like, oh, that's interesting. I liked him too. Yeah, I thought Helicopter Guy was good, but Shopping Cart Girl was really good. Yeah, that's true. And, I think Lawnmower Person, whatever, was also pretty solid. And I'd be like, okay, so we're bringing a helicopter, grocery cart, and lawnmower? Is that what we're saying here? Nobody's cared about GPA, where they went to school, what gender they were, or pronoun, or whatever. Nobody cared. They only cared about the quality of the portfolio. And that's how we down selected. And then we bring them in and, see what they're made of and see if they're a good, fit for the organization and see if, that they could be integrated in the family of our design team. I can't do that anymore. It's really hard. But I will tell you this. I don't think the value of what I'm going to call, what's your fighting robot in your portfolio? If there's nothing, if there's no there, I think more than ever, I think you need to have something that identifies you in a memorable way, and not you the person, not you the 4.0 GPA person or whatever it is. I think you need to have something in your portfolio that's memorable and expressive, and I'm going to underscore memorable, underscore. Thing in your portfolio that would get somebody like me to know that you're not just a mechanical arm, but you could really throw. And I think to do that, that is your design problem, really. Because if you graduate and you have a decent portfolio or a cool portfolio, but not one that can resonate with levels of understanding so that someone in that position, who's in a position to hire, can really understand what it is you're going to bring. Because guys like me are facing headwinds too. If I say, hey, I really need another headcount for design, can't we just get you a subscription to Dolly or Stable Diffusion? I mean, you really need that? You know, it's a tough call, you know? And I want to be able to say, yeah, I definitely do. Check this out, right? This is stuff. Like, this is somebody who could throw down, right? And what is that? And I think that is the biggest design challenge I think our industry has. I haven't unpacked it or solved it yet, but I think I hope, and if I don't keep my mouth shut on the conference call, I may ask the question, but I ask you guys, my career is sunsetting. I got maybe 20 years left. I love this. I won't live long enough to do it forever, but I'm sunsetting. It really matters to you guys. That's what I would be on the quest for, is how do you differentiate in a way that you can demonstrate your value to an employer, knowing that the headwinds are there in ways that I haven't seen before, at least in the hiring scenario. And it's not intended to scare you, because it's a challenge, and it's probably one of the better challenges you'll have, and it's one that, will mean like, hey, I can do my own stunts, right? I know how to do stuff, and I know how to do things of meaning and value, and I know how to find the answers and direct those and use the tools. This whole thing, you guys are, I'm sure you're familiar with Sora, I'm sure, yeah? No? Hands? Yes? Sora. Okay, you guys got to get under a rock on this one, please. It's really important. Sora is the latest thing. So last Thursday, more things happened in the AI world than have happened in a long time. But the biggest one was that Sora from OpenAI is going to go from prompt to full video. Why do you care? Well, for one, I got a buddy of mine who's a dear friend of mine, works for Tyler Perry, a movie producer. He just pulled out and just canceled an $800 million studio build in Atlanta after he saw what Sora could do. It's pretty badass, I'm just telling you. It's amazing. But what's really interesting about it is you can take a video model and extract the mesh network out of it and turn it into 3D geometry. So now you've got AI tools that can produce images, animate them, and extract the data to produce a model. That changes a lot. Changes a lot of things. So if I feel it, like I'm sphinctered up a little bit about it, but I've been there before, guys. I've seen this happen with CAD. And I watch people resist it or pretend it's not there. And I watch that tsunami crash right over them, right? And thankfully a handful of guys were old enough to just go out with the sea and retire with it. But I'm not there, and you're not there. So the thing you got to do is look at the tsunami and figure out how you're going to become a big wave surfer. Because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about surfing the big kahuna. You got to paddle into that bad boy and hold on and figure out how you're going to use it, surf it, and make it so that you're just not another mechanical arm, but you have a real mastery of all these things, and that you're in a leadership position of being able to do this. Because you're not competing with your friends who are left or right of you, right? Like when you all get to graduation, it gets real then. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, wow, I got to figure out how I'm going to monetize this education that I paid for, make it happen. And you're not competing with each other. Of course you are in some respects, and you're going to want to go to different places and do different things, but you're competing with a global economy, right? Of connected people who have all the tools they need to do whatever. So, it's definitely something to be conscious of and to be on top of. I would not let the emerging trends in these technologies go. Don't let them catch you. Don't be caught by that. Be a big wave surfer. Do your own stunts. Figure out how you're going to use it. Some of this stuff is going to be incredibly incredible. And dare I say, you got to think of it as like a superpower. Not like if somebody, but the thing is, it's like a superpower that a lot of people have, but the superpower in the right hands of somebody who's noble and right-minded is a superhero, right? And that's what you guys got to be. You got to look at this, how to use this power that's becoming, ubiquitous and democratized for everybody, and look at that superpower and then use it like a superhero, not like somebody who's going to get swamped by it or displaced by it. But that's a different type of mastery of those tools. You got to start by knowing what's going on and figure out how you're going to differentiate yourself in a very crowded space called everyone has a kick-ass portfolio, right? You feel me on this, guys? For real? We're getting real about this? I don't want to be too preachy to you because, but I am sincere about this, right? I care about my country, the humanity in general, and the health of people of all nations of the world. It's like, this is really game-changing stuff. It's pretty shockingly impactful, right? So you guys are in design. You're right in the right space to be the leaders of this. So get ahead of it, please. It's important. All right. Sorry for that. Did I get too serious on y'all? Go back to talking about